managed by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
1.2 seconds left. Texas A&M.
Here's Taylor, keep in mind. As he races to that corner.
Radford, the inbounder, looking to bounce. Garcia.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. The NCAA tournament is into the round of 16. There was shrapnel in the Big 12. There's not a lot of anything but really good for the ACC and the Big East. We'll get to that in a moment. Good afternoon. It's Monday, March the 25th. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, and I'm David Smoak. And again, this is 365 Sports. We'll have a couple of basketball analysts, including Kevin Flaherty at 4 o'clock, and then Mike Casazza, who covers West Virginia, on their new basketball coach who was hired to freeze over the weekend. Also, Evan Miyakawa from evanmia.com, his thoughts about the remaining 16 and kind of how they line up with his computer and analytics. And also, Pat Nunley breaks down Baylor now after winning the national title, has been not able to get past the first weekend for 3 consecutive years. What do they do? Do they change? Different philosophy? What? And then Nicki Collen punched the ticket to the Sweet 16, will join us at 4:45. All right, here's the lineup. And now one of these has been decided. It said like an and or on the Sweet 16. The teams from the start, Thursday, Clemson, who just knocked out Baylor against Arizona, San Diego State, UConn, Alabama, North Carolina, Illinois and Iowa State, North Carolina State and Marquette, also Gonzaga and Pittsburgh, Duke, and Houston. And what a game that was last night. We will start
Gonzaga and Purdue.
Gonzaga and Purdue, excuse me. And Duke and Houston, and what a slugfest that was. We'll have a quote from Kelvin Sampson here momentarily. So those are the Sweet 16 games. They will start early in the evening on Thursday.
Yeah, look, starting with Houston, it's completely not a surprise that Kelvin Sampson, among every coach, can figure out a way to win a game when you've got 4 starters fouled out, or in the kind of trouble that they were. They figured it out. They moved along down the line. A&M's a great story. Like, they were able to build, and we'll see what Buzz Williams can do and keep together with that team next year. But other than, like, there were some big upsets, obviously, through the weekend, but you do see this year a lot different than last year in that those number 1 seeds, there's some separation between the UConns, the Purdues, the Houstons of the world.
North Carolina
of the world, that those teams are really, really good. I think that Iowa State showed that they can hang with anybody. I think Tennessee showed they can hang with anybody. But we'll see going down the line, because particularly UConn and Purdue look like they are out for blood.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good weekend of hoops. Not a ton in the way of upsets. I mean, there's a couple of teams that are still hanging around, obviously, like an NC State being an 11 seed. They're one of the exceptions to the rule. You had who else? I mean, everybody's a 1, a 4. Clemson, obviously, over Baylor. Besides that, who are you looking at? That's about it. I mean, that's it.
It was a very innocuous weekend for Shockers after they got to Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, the first round you had some, but the second round heading into the Sweet 16, I mean, everybody's pretty much chalk with the exception of
North Carolina State.
And North Carolina State.
Red hot.
And they're red hot, and the ACC's red hot. They have the bragging rights. Jeff Capel's smiling right now after his comments about the Big 12. You see the ACC has a quarter of the Sweet 16, the Big 12 just with 2. So, and then it had, teams, beating Big 12 schools. So you now have that opportunity as well with a Houston and Duke matchup. So you could see even more of that. But a really great weekend. Clemson still around, kind of a somewhat of a surprise with that upset over Baylor, beating Baylor. So Jeff Capel, I feel like, could run that tape back and really be like, see, I told you guys. Now, all that really matters, because I don't think we ever sit around and really talk Sweet 16s. And, hey, you remember the 94 Sweet 16? Yeah. It's who wins at the end. So that'll be ultimately who has bragging rights. But, yeah, great first couple of rounds for the ACC. Everybody else kind of spread out. Pac-12 hanging on with just one team now at this point in Arizona. But Colorado made some interesting, things happen. Oregon had a chance. And yeah, it was an entertaining weekend. Not craziness. I think the first, first round of games was where we saw more of the madness of March and not so much on Saturday and Sunday, but really enjoyed it. And Houston, man, what an effort from Texas A&M, but all credit to Houston for being able to just grit that out and get it done there at the end. And to have your heart ripped out thinking you're going to win it in regulation, and then for A&M to hit a big shot and send it to overtime, you were thinking, oh my gosh, are they going to get knocked out before they even reach the Sweet 16? And able to ultimately get it done in extras. But what an effort by Buzz Williams and the Aggies. And the Big 12 needed that. Houston needed that, because anything less would have been a massive disappointment. And, I'm just excited to see how this continues to play out.
So the AC, by the way, other than NC State, a double-digit seed, they're the only one left. The next highest seed as far as number is Clemson at 6, San Diego State at 5. Everyone else is where they are. In fact, I don't have this note, but this is only the 5th time since they expanded the tournament to 64 back in 1985. Listen to this. 5th time ever that the top 2 seeds are all still alive entering the Sweet 16. So even though they're the top 2 seeds, that hasn't always worked that way, but it has this year. ACC, as Craig brought up, a perfect 8-0 in the first and second round games. There's Carolina, Duke, Clemson, and NC State, all in the Sweet 16. Here's another note about the ACC from Bob Holliday. When North Carolina beat Michigan State, it extended the NCAA's most amazing streak. Aside from UCLA's 7 consecutive titles, the ACC has now had 45 consecutive Sweet 16s with somebody in it. Every year. Since 1979, no other conference comes close to that. Now, here's another incredible streak. How about Gonzaga? They have been so close. Obviously, the latest was when they were beaten by Baylor in Indianapolis. 9th consecutive Sweet 16. How amazing. Only one other program in the tournament has had multi-years going. Houston with 4, Gonzaga at 9, North Carolina. Those are the great years with Jordan and Dean Smith and company, and UCLA with John Wooden at the very top. 14. So Gonzaga putting up some numbers too. But boy, don't you know, they would trade half of them, all of them, for a national title.
Now, on the ACC, I would say that this was not a banner regular season for them at all. Like there was, North Carolina was good all year. Everybody knew that. Duke is Duke, but, the thing that the ACC's had in the past is, Miami was shooting up there. There have been teams that, kind of out of nowhere had good seasons, or they felt like a really deep league. Then the regular season this year didn't feel like that, but they've made every entry that they've had in the tournament that did get in count
absolutely,
and count huge. So I guess their coaches were right. That this was a league that could hang a little bit more. There was a significant drop off from the top of their league to the middle, and I think that's where people were like, well, if you're going to beat up on these teams that are not really all that good, are you really that good? And the Big 12, and the SEC, you talk about how there's not as much of a drop-off all the way down. Well, look at where they're sitting this weekend. I also think that while sometimes that can prove you might be better than you are, I think this is just about individual teams and how they're hot and how they match up, and it doesn't necessarily speak to the conference all that much.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I feel like now more than ever, because of all the stuff with Sankey and the reports about what he's trying to do with the tournament, and, people taking that every type of a way. And we know that certainly the Big Ten, they're staying the quietest, but they're as active as anybody. And just all the conference realignment and the worry about the future and all these different types of things. I do think that everybody's adapted this SEC conference pride thing, and I've tried to warn against this how many times now. You'll keep hearing me say it. I don't want to have to root for every Big 12 school because for the sake of doing it and all this and that. So I think there's a level of kind of conference pride that's taken over across college sports because of just the environment that's been created right now. So everybody's got their banners waving and are defensive about their leagues and all of that. But the proof's in the pudding, and the ACC went out and they talked the talk via Jeff Capel. Now granted, the conversation he was having, it was about the depth of the league and why a team like his should be getting in. And maybe it is just that they've got the best group of top teams. That'll shake out in the end if they've got the team that's raising the trophy. But yeah, they've been off to a great start. The Big 12, for all the talk about them as being the best league top to bottom. If Iowa State or Houston go and win the title, then that'll still ring as true as it did previously. But if they don't, they fall in the Elite Eight, then yeah, there's going to be plenty of conversation about how true that was. But I'm with Paul. I think that's something that I think has kind of overtaken some of the conversation, not all of it, but some of it, when in reality it is more or less just about matchups. It's about, like, who did you play on the road to get there more often than it is about the schedule that you played during the regular season or things like that. And it's, for example, like Gonzaga beat Kansas, but is that Kansas that we've been watching at full strength here lately? No, and not to make excuses anyway, but that was a favorable matchup for them, an otherwise team that was ranked higher than them that they happened to catch with two guys who aren't playing. That would have been major factors. So matchups matter, and it's just like the luck of the draw. And hey, if you get a good draw, then you better take advantage of it. And so some teams are.
I think Gonzaga right now, I don't know what they'll do in the next round, but I know they blew Kansas's doors off. That was pretty quick. You could see it. Bill Self even saying after the game, when did you start thinking about next season? Honestly, about a month ago, based on trying to piece together the roster, how they put it together. And that's something Scott Drew said after their loss as well, or will have to address, because this is 3 consecutive years they've not been able to get through the first round. Now, here's another.
Duke's beating a 13 and a 12 to get to the Sweet 16.
No, yeah, sometimes it's the way things fall.
And they're a good team regardless, but that's definitely beneficial.
Kelvin Sampson after the dramatic overtime win against A&M. And you're right, Buzz Williams' team. Somebody sent out a note to me on Twitter last night when I was mentioning it, and I just thought it was a great game. And we're like, too many 46 free throws. I was like, that game reminded me of Gangs of New York. They're both violent. They're both incredibly athletic, great leaping ability. They crashed the boards. That's why you had as many players foul out. I thought in the end it was an incredibly entertaining game. All right, Kelvin Sampson on the overtime win over A&M. They went to the free throw line how many times? 45. I had 4 guys fell out. We go into overtime. Think about how many people watched this thing nationally and said, this game is over. And he went on to say, one of the best parts about us, no one's really watched our practices. They've never been to our conditioning. They don't know that the shuttles and sprints, that's the only thing I said to his team he was mentioning, fellas, were built for this. And after the disappointment of having to go into overtime with the long 3, they took over overtime pretty quickly.
And Buzz Williams, I mean, what a great call he had to set that up on the inbound was so awesome. And if you watched the fans and the bench, even Kelvin Sampson did not look like a guy who felt they had it all in control. Now, that's why look can be deceiving. The fans, I know what the fans are all thinking. They're like, oh, crap.
Yep.
This is where it ends right here, because you don't come back from something like that. And they're looking at, okay, who can come out and play in overtime? Oh, no one?
Yeah. Some guy that had to hit a critical free throw, by the way.
But that's what has been instilled in Houston all year long, and they just don't play bad games. They don't. They're not going to, like, you go
Big 12 championship game was a bad game.
That's the only one. They have one, and they're all banged up, so that you don't really have bad games. And when you have a team that is so top to bottom committed to the way that they prepare and the way that they show up and the way that every possession, you watch Houston, every possession matters to them. They're not going to have times during the game where you're like, oh, we're a little tired, we're good enough to overcome this. No, they play every possession like whether they're up 20 or down 20. It's the same. They play it the same way, and that's what lets you win when you have this really weird out there situation that never happens in overtime.
Yeah, I mean, Jamal Shedd's a star. I think that was just proven even more so last night. Kelvin Sampson's a Hall of Fame coach. I think that's just proven more last night. Houston's a hell of a basketball team, and fun to watch. I mean, that was a great game. Give Texas A&M a lot of credit. I mean, we'd be talking about the SEC and Greg Sankey in a much different way if they'd gotten A&M into the Sweet 16. You got a couple teams. You'd have, 3 teams that would have been in from the SEC with Tennessee and
Alabama.
Alabama. So they nearly got a bit more bragging rights there. But, no, I mean, Just incredible effort from Houston with the adversity they were dealing with in terms of availability, and just so impressed with them. Again, anything short of a Sweet 16 would have been a massive disappointment for that roster, and I still think, anything less than a Final Four probably feels that way somewhat, just because you've been off and on number one. You've lost so few games, but yeah, that was amazing, and happy for LJ Cryer, the former Baylor star who moved over to Houston.
Yeah, he was clutch.
Yeah, and they could have definitely used him.
Yep.
It's fair to say.
Well, he didn't know. They could have used him because he's another scorer. But the problem is they need some dogs on defense.
Yeah, but they could also use some buckets
sure.
the other day, certainly when shots weren't falling. But yeah, I mean, good for him. Again, just a credible game, credible finish, and credible effort from the other side. One of those sucks somebody had to lose that one, but in this case it was A&M. So yeah, let's see what the Cougs can do moving forward.
All right, the chat room's moving along. Obviously, you can text us if you want to by 4-339-1122 for Jared Stansberry covering Iowa State. Iowa State players who have appeared in multiple Sweet 16 games. Monty Morris in 14 and 16, Matt Thomas in 14 and 16, and now Robert Jones twice in 2022 and 2024. There are some programs that have been to, again, I'm going to show you a graphic in a minute, 35 to 45 or so of those. So good for Iowa State, and they've taken care of their business. Now, national titles. 19, I think it was Virginia. Nobody in 20. Baylor 21 and Kansas 22. In the last 5 NCAA tournaments, those 3 schools have each won a national title. Those 3 schools have not made it out of the first weekend in any of the 4 years they didn't win. Incredibly hard consistently to advance in this tournament, despite what we showed you with some of the schools that have made a habit of doing that.
It is very hard, and it becomes even harder when you become the hunted. When you are the one that, instead of those times where it's Kansas has always been the hunted, but particularly after you win a national title, your bullseye even gets bigger.
Yep.
Everybody wants a chunk of Kansas whenever they can get them because they're Kansas and, it's the home of basketball. But for a team like Baylor or Virginia, when you've been good, what's the pregame in the old days with Baylor and Virginia? Can they do it? Can they break through? Can they beat this team? Can Baylor beat Duke?
Break the jinx of Ralph Sampson? Yeah.
Now, once you've won a national title, the thing is, look at this little upstart that's playing mighty Baylor or Virginia or whoever. You're no longer the warm, cuddly little story. You're now the enemy, right, to all these people. You're a big dog. So once you've got that trophy, it's a lot different. And they're coming for you in a way that they weren't before because now you've shown that you need to be taken seriously.
Yeah, I also saw a stat that UConn is the first defending champion since 2016 to reach the Sweet 16. So you've got Kansas, Baylor, Virginia that you mentioned there, but Villanova in 2019, UNC in 2018, Villanova again in 2017. So since 2016, only one defending champ has reached the Sweet 16, and that's UConn this year, which is kind of an amazing stat as well to add to that. And I think in the case of Kansas, health, guys. Health played a major factor. That wasn't the same team. Now, they were up and down, topsy-turvy, not the same Kansas all year long that we're typically accustomed to watching. But to think that didn't play a role in their early exit, I think is foolish. Obviously, it played a role when you don't have some of your best players. In the case of Virginia, that brand of basketball is so it's so hit or miss that you run into the wrong matchup in the wrong night, and it's one of the ugliest things you could ever possibly watch, right? And in the case of Baylor, what is it? Because there's the big debate going on around. Are they getting too many one-and-dones? I'm seeing a lot of that.
Well,
I've seen a lot
that,
of, just wondering what the issue is for them that they haven't been able to reach the Sweet 16 since 2021. Is it just the matchups?
Have they gotten to the point where they're not getting some dogs when it comes to defense? Guys that are, again, you're not going to just go find Davion Mitchell. That was unbelievable. Right. They had depth at the guard position that was unbelievable. But they also had Jonathan Chamachachua when he was young and healthy. They had Vital inside, and they had Flo Thamba. You're not going to get that with all how talented that Misi is, and Michael, and also with oh my God, Loner. there's nobody there protecting the rim defensively, and I think that really came back to hurt him this year too.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's hard to do. It's hard to – I mean, there's a reason why Sweet 16, it almost sounds like it shouldn't be that big of a deal. There's a reason why people hang banners for that, though. It's hard to win those two games to get to that point, and hard to do it consistently. And the blue blood programs that do that so often, I think we maybe take that for granted sometimes of how difficult that really is because, it's tough. And Scott Drew's learning that firsthand because they haven't been able to do it the last 3 years, even though they've had teams with NBA lottery picks on each one of those and rosters that you think would be able to manage to get into the second weekend pretty easily. But that has not been the case for them, or obviously Kansas and Virginia to some extent as well. But, that's just been an interesting conversation going around of now, like, well, are we getting too many one-and-done type players or whatever? So I'm interested in how that conversation kind of evolves and really what do you do if you're Scott Drew? How do you go back to the drawing board and say, all right, what's missing these past 3 seasons outside of just it's the matchup, it's a health thing, it's a whatever. How do we get over the hump again? I think will be a fascinating offseason question for him. And look, he never stops working, nor does that staff, but no doubt they have to be disappointed to invest the way that they have and to bring in guys like Jacoby Walter, Keontae George, and those guys never even get to the round of 16. That's not what you signed up for. That's not what they signed up for. And so that's something that, will have to be looked over this offseason. And does that mean any major changes? Maybe not. Maybe it's just, again, luck of the draw. But that's certainly something that's kind of starting to build now of like, all right, there's – like, kind of need to get over that hump now. It's been 3 seasons. Let's get back to at least the second weekend.
And yet again, if they wouldn't have had Jacoby Walter for most of the year, or Yves Missi, where would they have been without them? Maybe they replace him with older veteran players. We'll have Pat Nunley, who's the color analyst for Baylor basketball today at 425. Now, most NCAA tournament wins without winning a national title. Gonzaga, Purdue, they're still alive. Illinois, they're still alive. Oklahoma did not make the tournament. Those 4 in the 40s with tournament wins, that is a bunch of tournament victories without a national title. Rick Barnes in the win against Texas, which got really dicey at the end, but Tennessee was able to make some really good plays down the stretch on defense, made a bunch of free throws. Rick Barnes has now reached $1 million in bonus money, got $400 for the SEC regular season, $200,000 for the bid to the tournament, and $200,000 for the first 2 wins of the tournament for $1 million for Rick Barnes and Tennessee. I thought Texas at the end, a lot of teams showed that at the end, including Baylor, including Texas, among some others, but they did not. They dug themselves too much of a hole and waited until it was too late, or they weren't given a chance until it was too late if another team perhaps burped a little bit along the way.
Yeah, I came across a Jay Billis tweet talking about Gonzaga making 9 consecutive Sweet 16s and, like, basically, going on the attack, in the tweet, like, go ahead and try to marginalize that. And now, I don't think anybody's going to try to marginalize that, but I damn sure wouldn't want to be on the graphic of like, hey, most this without a national title. I'd much rather be the team that's won the national title than the team that's been to 1 billion Sweet 16s in a row. So that's a heck of accomplishment. I sound like I'm marginalizing it. I'm not trying to, but at what point you're like, all right, cool, 30 years in a row, 0 national titles. Don't give a damn about being in the Sweet 16 at this point. So, but it's still an incredible feat, and we've just been talking about how hard it is to get that second weekend. So to do it nearly for an entire decade straight is pretty remarkable.
All right, here's one more note. We're going to skip over the Peter Burns. We'll get to that another time, Garrett. West Virginia, Darian DeVries, who was at, Drake, is now their new men's basketball coach. In fact, we'll have a guest on in just a moment, Mike Casazza, on that. He'll join us here in the next segment. He's the new head coach, West Virginia, reacting pretty soon. Afterwards and getting a hot coach. Drake knocked out. DeVries became available, and there we go with him.
I think they're going to love the style that he brings. And also, this was a very interesting coach to get in that it is he comes more than likely with an added bonus of a superstar player that he made. Well, he had a hand in making 50% of them.
Yeah, no, he's a hell of a coach, but his son is also a great player. And I saw some discussion on him last night with some of the, wraparound shows and whatever else. And so he's bringing his son with him. West Virginia gets their man. All right, when we come back, Mike Casazza on West Virginia and their new coach, like we just mentioned. A little bit later on, Peter Burns and his thoughts about the expansion of the NCAA men's tournament and his thoughts if it got to 72 with some interesting stuff, and we'll share that with you too. Kevin Flaherty on the NCAA tournament, his thoughts about the Sweet 16. Somebody asked me about what's Gangs of New York. Can you guys, either one of you, describe the movie
Gangs of New York?
It's as bloody and gory and violent of a turf war while people were coming into the country in New York City and trying to survive.
It's Daniel Day-Lewis and Leo DiCaprio and somehow an unattractive Cameron Diaz and John C. Reilly, and it's a fight, man.
It is an absolute, we're talking about with
kill here,
cleavers.
And a kill here, and a kill here.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's what the game reminded me of. And yes, a bunch of free throws, but imagine had they not, that thing would have turned really, really ugly. What a game it was. When we come back, Mike Casazza, and this is 365 Sports. Dr. Kent Petty and PettyClinicLowT.com can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. I was driving back from Dallas earlier today, and I was listening to sports talk radio, and I think I heard 4 different type of low testosterone commercials. Belly fat that you don't seem to like. Why? Because you're pretty much active. You exercise and you have a nice diet. You're not as, your energy's just not there. Yes, there's the sex drive issue. Your concentration. Something's missing. And low testosterone could be it. As you get older, 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone, and maybe that is you if you hit any of those symptoms or checked any of those boxes. Dr. Petty and his staff, contact them at PettyClinicLowT.com, can put you in a position where they will set you, they will set you up to get your blood work. They then get the results, and then will call you if your testosterone levels is too low. Put you in an option, a program to increase your testosterone levels so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be at PettyClinicLowT.com.
Rev up your excitement. Celebrate the spirit of adventure during the Jeep Celebration event. Join us at Allen Samuels in Waco as we roll out incredible deals on rugged and reliable Jeep vehicles you love. Seize the moment and drive home in the new Jeep of your dreams. With special financing options and exclusive offers, there has never been a better time to explore the world of Jeep. Hurry in, the savings won't last long. Visit AllenSamuelsDCJ.com and see them firsthand only at Allen Samuels in Waco. Let your adventure begin.
Come by, let's be friends.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.CamilleJohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at Baylor.edu/alumni.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Casazza cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Casazza based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
West Virginia checks off the list. Darian DeVries is the head coach. Mike Casazza, 247, covers West Virginia, joins us on 365 Sports. And it seemed like Mike, and a lot of times, anytime there's a hiring, most of every reactions are very positive, but it seemed like this one is overwhelmingly, a lot of people are thrilled with who they have.
Yeah, it's been hard to find. You grab the magnifying glass and you look for the read between the lines about where he came from or where he's going, and what are we missing? Because everybody's the newly crowned hero of a program, and this is one that definitely needs the hero, but can't find a whole lot of negatives. Just the guy who's won at a high level at a place that hasn't had a ton of luxuries. He'll have more now. He won't have the most, but all he's known is winning. And for the longest time, that was the status of this program. So to get it back on track, you get a guy who's only known life in that lane for a while. So far, so good. Day one. Won the press conference, though.
It's locked up. He's bringing his kid, right?
Not yet in the portal.
Okay.
But that seems to be a formality. I don't think he's going to end up going like Creighton. I'd heard that, late on in the regular season of the tournament, was that if his dad didn't get like a high major job, it'd be understood, hey, here's a guy who could be a pro. Like will be a pro. Would he be an NBA pro? We'll see. But why not prove yourself in a major conference? And the Big East to be a step up. And DeVries certainly knows Creighton from his 20 years there, and he knows Greg McDermott from coaching with him for a while. So it seemed like a soft landing spot, low risk, high reward for him. Same thing here, except maybe a higher reward because the Big 12 is just that good in basketball. I don't think anybody's going to complain about having a 2-time conference player of the year coming into the portal. Probably at a discount too when you come to the NIL world, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Mike, just how quickly did this all come together, kind of behind the scenes? What was the workings of the staff to get this done, Ren Baker and company, and just how did it all this sort of maneuver, knowing that there were other teams that were interested?
Yeah, you got to remember they had. Sorry, I'm walking my dog here, trying to get my life back together. They've had about 9 months. Don't forget to get this together. Right. So they paused their search, formally, the active part of it in June. But I know I talked to people about the season, and they were trying to get their hands on information about Drake and their program. And that's a private school, so his contract you can't fool you. So how do you get your hands on that? Well, why are you looking for that? They're trying to figure out more about this coach and what he does and what makes him so good. And that was a clue right now. And then I talked to people at different times who were watching his games live or on tape. That was another clue. So he was certainly one. Dusty May was the guy that he wanted to talk to. Mark Byington and JMU was one. So they had a list of guys that they kind of curated from the very beginning. Once it became clear they were going to make a change during this regular season, which frankly wasn't very deep into the season. They have a losing non-conference record. But this one, they actually got to him sounds wrong. They talked to him before his game in Omaha. And I think that was probably intentional because get it out of the way, but also make sure you're first in line. Don't let other schools jump in line and you get in their ear first. And he thinks about you a little bit. And then if he likes you, well, then he's comparing you to everybody else he may or may not talk to. If he takes the call, if he takes the meeting, it's going to have to clear a certain bar. And I think West Virginia went in strong, the day before they played their first round game in Omaha. So that would have been, Wednesday, and they hire him on Sunday. They had some other conversations in person with Byington, Nico Medved from Colorado State. I don't think anybody blew him away quite like DeVries did.
Do you think that the style will translate pretty well? The fans will like it? You mentioned winning, but the kind of style of basketball he plays seems like it's a nice transition, an easier one, a closer one to what Bob Huggins was doing that everybody loved.
Yeah, well, they liked the defense when they were pressing, but his offenses were brutal to watch sometimes. And I think that's what will wear on people, because the way the rules were, the way that recruiting went, this became more and more of an offensive sport. And to really zag into defense, to play like a motion offense where you have two bigs on the floor, like they had two NBA players in their roster who were like 6'11", and they couldn't make it work. They had Derek Culver, who should have been an NBA player, never had his head on right. They had Oscar Sheway, who's in the NBA. And they couldn't make that work. Well, that was a really weird style of basketball. You're looking like four guards or three guards and a really nimble four nowadays. And that is kind of what DeVries has done. Now, some of that is necessity, just because who you can and can't recruit in a place like the MVC. But he still made it work. And what's interesting, talking to people that know him a little bit or have competed against him or who studied him on tape, he does a lot of 5-out offense. They're big. This year is pretty good, so that's been different. But they're a stretch guy. They're four. They really handle it. And if you're spreading three guards on the floor and you got a big who can handle it, that's going to be unique here for West Virginia. More in line with the Big 12. Like in the Big 12, your 3s and 4s are big guys who can move the ball and move with the ball. That has not been a strong point for West Virginia. They've been undersized or they've been slow in the front court. I think that's going to be a big change, and it should open up things offensively.
Mike, not only personnel-wise, but just in general, what kind of shape do you feel like the program is in terms of what he's inheriting? Is everything pretty good to go in terms of NIL and facilities and all those types of things, or is there some areas of work that's probably on the list of like, hey, put this on, not the demands, so to speak, but the things that we need to check off?
Yeah, it's in flux for sure. They don't want for facilities. They have a wonderful practice facility that others would love to have. Their arena is great, 14,000 seats. Got a whole bunch of modernized renovations. They didn't tear anything down, but they expanded the concourses, the concessions, the restrooms. That's awesome. That's great. Women's basketball has spent more on recruiting the past 5 years in the men's program.
One more thing. I'm sorry.
No, that's an odd distinction for a team, but like that's going to have to fix. They're going to have to pour money into assistant coaches. They have not paid their assistant coaches very well here, but also because people here are comfortable. Bob Huggins had 7 assistant coaches in 16 years. 7. You get 5 on a team right now. That's going to be a weird thing for people to look at now, is that you're going to have new blood, but also coaches making $250,000, $300,000, where the highest salary for an assistant coach here was $200 before.
Yeah, that's well below now the marketplace. Mike, with what Ren Baker has faced since he arrived, the Huggins story right off the top, obviously the Neil Brown letting that play out and then giving him an extension, how would you grade him? It seems like he's done a really good job, but how would you grade him yourself watching what he's done and kind of what he's had to face?
Well, yeah, the TBD is obviously the basketball hire, but I think that they got one of the guys that's not the guy they wanted. So the preliminary grade here would be A, of course, right? Because that's what everybody's going to tell you. We'll see. The Brown thing is interesting because that was an odd game of poker. He came in late, didn't really have a choice. You weren't going to hire a great coach while you're learning the job. So he kind of bets on himself in the program a little bit with Brown, and Brown goes out and vindicates that with 9 wins. The big thing is they redid the contract for Brown, and they lowered the salary the first 2 years, and they kind of diminished the buyout, which is this huge anchor around West Virginia. To maneuver a contract like that with a coach who is succeeding and thinks he's on the up and up, that's pretty impressive. That's kind of like a little bit of wizardry. And then don't forget this too, like they hired a men's soccer coach who got their team to the College Cup final this year. That's pretty wild. For college soccer here is kind of a big deal. They transitioned their baseball program. The coach is retiring. They have a pretty good program here, and they kept it in-house. They don't have to go out and get a search. They're using a coach in waiting here from someone who's on the staff. And by the way, their women's basketball program has had 3 coaches in 3 years. He just hired one of them who has his team with 25 wins and is in the NCAA tournament tonight against Caitlin Clark in Iowa. That's a ton in 1 year plus right now, like 16 months so far. He seems like he's checked the boxes for the reason you would hire a guy like him.
All right, so what kind of dog? We have to get the multitasking. If you were writing a column and on the show with us, that's probably normal. Walking your dog while doing the segment with us, what kind of dog, and does the dog run the neighborhood?
Would you believe I'm running a 5K? It sounds like it, right? No, I'm actually in the middle of my afternoon run. I hadn't gotten it. I was almost done. I couldn't beat the clock, so you guys won that one there. You won the race. This is a beagle. This is a beagle who loves to run, but also loves to smell. So it's a bit herky jerky when we're running. It's a lot of stop and start. But right now she's got her nose in a pile of sticks and twigs over here that maybe some rabbit or something is in. So she was being quiet.
Nope, there must be something there. You found it. All right, Mike, great stuff, man. Thanks for being a part of the show and the insight on DeVries as the new West Virginia men's basketball coach as he's running a 5K and with his beagle. That's about as good as it gets right there. We appreciate him.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a really good hire. I know West Virginia's been building up to this point for a long while now. You've had the writing on the wall with Huggins for, like he said, like 9 months. Has that really been that long? I guess it has. But you've had this big build-up to be able to flesh out the candidates and find your guy. And so West Virginia has now done that, and Tucker DeVries is his son. I want to make sure he gets his name correctly as well, but certainly that'll be now one of the next shoes to drop, you would think, or at least the one to watch. And good luck to him. He's got a very proud program, a lot of enthusiastic people that want it to succeed, and it's not been what it's supposed to be these, I guess, in recent years, and there's reasons for that just because of the whole Bob Huggins situation, but West Virginia's proven it can win, and so let's see how quickly they can get back to that at the rate that they feel is acceptable for that program. But we all know Ren Baker and feel like he's a smart guy who knows what he's doing, and so far so good. And you got the questions about Neil Brown at least out of the way for another year with his job safe and being able to try and build off last year. So now a new basketball coach. It's a lot going on right now in Morgantown, but it seems like they found a pretty good basketball coach based on all the reactions that I've seen.
All right, when we come back, a couple of notes. One, John Wilner with some information on the Pac-2 and the distribution they're going to get from the departing schools that are headed to all over the place, Big Ten, to the ACC, and also to the Big 12. And a note about if, in fact, the tournament was to expand to 72, what is Peter Burns? He had an idea, and I saw kind of more that thought it was a good idea than didn't, even though there are some against expansion, and that's an opinion, too. When we come back, this is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com. Today, I was at a back specialist and took a folder that had the image of my MRI of my lower back, my lumbar, back in 2022. And the readings, too. I mentioned that throughout last week as I was getting ready for this appointment with the doctor. And when I was there, I checked in. It was, by the way, an incredibly smooth experience at the Carroll Clinic. I had my envelope, gave it to him. Doctor was able to look at it, did a few x-rays, had a consultation, and looks like maybe there's a game plan for my lower back and the hip that's kind of feels like there's a fish hook in it. So it all started with an MRI at IdealMRI.com. Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff, the owners of that business, had a dream to, one, have an MRI machine that would get the information you and your doctor would need, make sure it was state-of-the-art, it is, and also not charge you an arm and a leg, and they don't. It's $497 or less every single time rather than the average MRI of over $1,000, around $1,100 last time I checked. So Ideal MRI had a lot to do with me being able to set up this appointment very quickly, get the disc and images I needed and the reading, and I handed it to the doctor earlier today. Dr. Maxey and his staff at IdealMRI.com, just off of I-35 in the Central Texas Marketplace in Waco.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Nicki Group Insurance Agency. With the Nicki Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Nicki Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Nicki Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular, jalapeno, or cheese snack sticks. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Saw this earlier. John Wilner of the Wilner Hotline put out the settlement, part of the agreement between the two teams, Oregon State, Washington State, and the 10 departing schools. And you see Brandon Marcello on the top. That's the part that kind of makes all the other stuff, wraps it up in a bow. Those two, Oregon State, Washington State, will receive a total of $65 million in payments from the departing 10 schools, according to the settlement, which is below with what John Wilner put underneath his own timeline. That's a pretty nice chunk of money. What did you say, though, in the break, Paul? $65 million.
$65 million. That'll keep them each going for another year, and then it's gone. I mean, then their payments go down again.
That doesn't include the college football playoff, which went up to $3.5 million, even though it used to be $6 million, but was $350,000.
Look, if most of us got a $65 million divorce settlement, we'd be fine. We'd be, off living in a vacation home and living the rest of our life. The thing is they've got to take this money, split between the two of them, and fund their athletic department with it.
Mm-hmm.
And, so they've got, another 2 years of being able to fund their school like a Power 5 school like they used to. But then once that 2 years is up, that's when the plan has to take effect as to what's going to be next.
Unless there's more crazy when it comes to realignment, then all of a sudden they are available to somebody else.
Yeah, if that turns out that way, where the ACC is suddenly looking for schools because they've already made the move out west, and those two would make some sense. I know there's long been the Big 12 speculation, but there's not really been anything substantial outside of they're hosting swimming in Washington. That's a sign that they're going to go grab these two schools, or at least reading into that way. Outside of that, there's really been no reason to believe that that's, heating up or just around the corner. I know there's various legal things that are, part of this too, where you can't, it's like, there was the talk about, we can't technically move till later on this summer, and then you got to get to a certain point of the negotiations and the settlements, and just there's a lot of up in the air. And so before even moving to the conference, they had this business to settle, and their business with their old mates to settle even further. And now we've got some details, and now we've got some of that happening. So that's good. It's one less thing to worry about, one more thing settled if you're those two schools, but also the departing schools as well. And I think it's great that Oregon State and Washington State are going to have, this money to operate with, and then whatever comes via the NCAA tournament, as you said, and the college football playoff, and that's not going to be everlasting, but it is a nice nest egg to try and build off of and build with. And, what are their plans? I think we're still wondering that. I think they're probably still wondering that. Is it the best situation for them moving forward to try and rebuild? Is there a lifeline coming from the ACC or from the Big 12? We know it's not going to be coming from the Big 10 or the SEC, but is there something we're not thinking of? I don't know. Their options seem to be out there on the table, but they're in a much better position than we originally thought based on the payouts that they're getting. And I did see, though, a lot of show me the money and a lot of dunking on Oregon fan or whatever. And I've seen a few knowing what you know now, would you still have left USC and every single Utah, 4 corner schools, and every single one of them were like, yeah, we still would have left because this doesn't guarantee anything. What station are you playing on next year? The Mountain West channels is what you're playing on based on it. So, yeah, it's a nice victory, but how much of does this battle turn into winning a war ultimately? I think we're still a long ways from knowing that exactly for Oregon State and Washington State, but we want to see them be able to have their programs fully operational and have a seat at the table as well. But we also know at the same time that there is a tightening of the rope on this whole Division I college football enterprise. And are they, unfortunately, like those first in schools that are suddenly out? Are they the first of more to come? Are they out for just the time being and will be back in soon? I mean, that's the stuff that we don't have any clue on right now, but they're balancing right on that line of teetering one way or the other. And right now they're teetering towards being those that are getting excluded first, but we'll see with what they're able to do with this cash and any arrangements that might come in the future.
It's a hell of a lot more than they probably thought. Maybe even more than the departing schools thought they would have to continue to give up, at least for $5 million more. And they seem to kind of have this little parachute. And good for them, because all hell broke loose for those two. Just like it's almost broken loose for a lot of others that all of a sudden looked around and went, oh, my God, what are we going to do? Well, they've gotten this is a 2-year, Paul, you're right, about a 2-year parachute and maybe better news. And again, we don't know. Now, on the expansion of the NCAA tournament, like it or not, the NCAA tournament will be expanded. This from Peter Burns, works for ESPN. When it does, here's a win-win. 72 teams go from 4 play-in games to 8. All 16 teams, now read this very carefully, all 16 teams in the 8 play-in games should be bubble teams. No 16-seed or automatic qualifier should ever have to play in a play-in game. It protects the automatic qualifiers, and the field does grow, although not much, from 68 to 72.
I mean, if we're going to have to do this, I guess I'm fine with this plan.
Like it or not.
I mean, it is. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is unnecessary surgery for the NCAA tournament. It's like, look, you can have this mole where nobody can see it, or we can charge you all this money to take it off, and it's fine. It's benign. Nothing's going to happen to it. And you're like, I can feel it when I put my shirts on. And you're like, okay. It just, I don't know. I don't.
Unnecessary surgery.
It is. It's unnecessary surgery. It doesn't seem to need to happen. And I hope if they force it down our throats, they make it as palatable as possible. But they could, I know this is wild, they could just leave it alone. They could just do that and continually try to find ways to enhance inside of it, or go to work on making the regular season flow a little bit better and getting more value out of the regular season. That is where I think there's more untapped potential than taking something. And this is what big corporations do. You want to take how do we make more money? The only way is to add more to the tournament. Do any of our consumers want that? No, but we're still going to make more money, so screw them. As opposed to find a way to make the regular season better and, highlight those games more. And maybe it's going to be harder work and you have to be a little bit more creative, but it will pay off in the long run, because instead of 3 weeks, you're talking about 5 months.
Yeah, this is not the Peter Burns tweet that I expected, and he works for ESPN technically, but really he's just the mouthpiece for the SEC network, which was the tweet that I saw first come across this weekend, where he rightfully got absolutely obliterated for basically being Greg Sankey's lapdog. And I'm sure Peter's a nice guy, nothing personal, but sometimes the caping for a conference or a commissioner just goes so overboard that somebody needs to be checked, and that was the case this past weekend with his comments about trying to basically, Greg Sankey doesn't want Cinderella left out, and he was trying to basically PR this whole thing and got destroyed, rightfully so. Now this is not nearly as bad as that, and I tried to digest this as quickly as I could. And I mean, if you're going to, I don't like the phrasing "like it or not." Like,
that's very brash.
I don't like that at all. So I don't like that, but that also just kind of plays with the role, I suppose. So If you're going to have to eat this for dinner or for, your future March Madnesses, this isn't the worst case scenario. This isn't the worst thing in the world. I'm more of a, if it's not broke, don't fix it guy. The TV ratings from this past weekend were excellent. I don't think that you really need to jazz this up or dress this up too much, but I guess if you're going to do it, like it or not, then this is fine. But it's not anything that gets me excited or gives me a whole lot of...
Yeah, it doesn't make me want to, okay, this is pretty cool, like EA Sports with the new video game.
I just feel like so much of college sports now becomes, and it reminds me of pro wrestling Twitter sometimes. It's just like, how can we tinker with something? How can we change something? Like it's like people just get bored, but I know they get bored in search of more money, and so this is what all this is. It's just like, tournament's great, but sitting around here trying to come up with ideas on how to make college. How can we make more money? Let's expand the tournament. I mean, that's basically what this is. Yeah. It's a money grab.
Well, that's what the NFL does with their playoffs and an extra week.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's all this really is. The constant tinkering with things is to make more money. So would that make more money? Yes. Would that be more feasible for, I think, people to come to grips with and the ideas that are the more preposterous variety that were thrown out initially when we started hearing about an expanded tournament? Yes, this would be a better resolution or a better solution than probably where some of our minds went initially. So from that standpoint, fine. But if it doesn't happen and everything stays as is in this particular case with this particular tournament, I would be totally okay with that. But this is reasonable. And, I'm sure there's probably some that like this idea. But in general, I'm anti-expansion of March Madness. So we'll see what they do, but like it or not, we're going to get expansion apparently, and he would seem to know.
All right, Garrett, name one winner in the play-in games.
I don't watch the play-in games.
Okay.
The tournament, to me, doesn't
Paul,
start.
Name a winner from the play-in games.
Colorado State.
All right, beat the one and then the thump by Texas in the next round. Good for you. Craig, can you think? And sometimes a 16 seed's not a play-in game, but then a team might win a play-in game and be seeded 11th or whatever it might be. I don't remember many of them myself. So somebody just put that up in the chat.
Colorado
State.
Colorado State.
Yeah.
Colorado was one of them too.
Clemson.
Colorado State and Virginia, which was very memorable. Mm-hmm. Wagner and Howard. And the next day, the play-in games, well, there were four of them, was Colorado Boise State. Yeah. You're right, Craig. And then Grambling, and Colorado really made a nice run and just didn't have enough. And then Grambling and Montana State. So adding 4 or 6 or 8 more teams or whatever, you're going to remember those games. Nothing wrong with them. I'm glad some of those teams were able to get units that they cash for themselves and also the conference, which we brought up last week. All right, when we come back, Kevin Flaherty, national college basketball writer, columnist, his thoughts about who we have. And is this not quite chalk, but pretty damn close to it? And this is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, 30-pound bags of live crawfish. Last week, $4.99 a pound. That will eventually start to drop as the spring goes deeper. You can call and order at Waco Custom Marketplace, or you could drop by their location while you're there to shop for anything else, including the butcher shop and bakery, or the knickknacks and necessities and the marinades and seasonings. And even if you want to go buy and get corn on the cob, potatoes for the crawfish boil, shrimp for the crawfish boil, and sausage for the crawfish boil. And, what you need for the crawfish boil when it comes to whatever you want to put on it, something like nice and spicy and Cajun. Orders must be placed for these 30-pound sacks of crawfish, live crawfish, by Wednesday at 6. And if you do that, you can start to pick up what you ordered. Could be 1, 2, 5 bags, whatever it is, of live crawfish by any time after 4 o'clock on Friday or while they're open on Saturday. Waco Custom Marketplace, full-service butcher shop, full-service bakery, and 30-pound bags of live crawfish available at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and Equal Housing Lender.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
There are 8 conferences with teams remaining in the NCAA tournament. The ACC, as we mentioned, really almost off the top, 4. The Big East with 3. The SEC, Big 10, Big 12 with 2. The Pac-12 with Arizona. The Mountain West with San Diego State, and the West Coast Conference with Gonzaga. Kevin Flaherty, 247 Sports, college basketball writer, joins us on 365 Sports. Kevin, thanks for your time. NC State's the only remaining double-digit seed. Are you surprised there wasn't one other or 2 that made it into the Sweet 16?
Yeah, I am a little surprised. I think a lot of times when we talk about, this season is really wild and anybody can win it. One of 2 things happens. It winds up going extremely chalk, which is what it did. But a lot of other times it goes a lot like people think, and you see a number of upsets. You see all these teams pushing through it, and I thought it was really interesting. One of the things that surprised me a little bit, I know you can say this on just about any year, but some of the teams that entered the tournament with a lot of momentum kind of laid eggs a little bit. When you look at New Mexico, when you look at some of these teams that people were, McNeese really didn't play well, teams that people were thinking, okay, they've generated a lot of momentum. And then you had NC State that, needed the ACC tournament just to get in. And you had Clemson that, was not so great down the stretch either. And they're both still playing. And so I think it goes to show that as much as we always talk about, hey, you want to be playing your best basketball in March, it's important to enter on the tournament on a high note. A lot of times it really matchups and how a team plays on a specific day is just much more important than whether or not a team is playing well overall.
Yeah, one of those teams, Kevin, that got bounced in the first game was Auburn, a team that played very well, and they had a style that seems to, especially when you're looking at a team that can unseat UConn. To me, it was Auburn because they shoot threes, they play crazy defense, they're crazy athletic, that, you know, all these things, but that did not matter when it came down to it on Friday.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir. I loved Auburn. I thought Auburn had a really great chance to go to the Final Four, and I thought when Selection Sunday happened, I thought, oh my gosh, that is a brutal matchup for UConn to get in their Sweet 16. And you know, it was interesting because I think on most days, I think Auburn goes ahead and kind of handles Yale. It was, I don't want to say fluky because that takes away from what Yale did, and it was impressive. But, you know, you have the flagrant 2 where the guy gets ejected. You know, you have Auburn, you know, not playing really its best game. And that's the thing about it. You can go home in those situations. I know, you know, we obviously talk just about every time about Baylor. And, you know, I think Baylor beats Clemson, you know, a vast majority of the time. But I think that when you look at that game, at the shots that Baylor missed, they were good shots. They were open 3-pointers, and, you know, looking at the free throw numbers and all of those different things, they just didn't fall on that given day. And that's the great part about the tournament when your team wins. And the bad part about the tournament when your team loses is you can look at it and say, hey, it just wasn't our day, and that cost you a chance at the national championship.
Having said that, Kevin, do you think Jeff Capel feels somewhat vindicated in his comments, given where the ACC sits with a quarter of the field, or do you think it's not exactly that same conversation? It's just that they happen to have maybe the best teams at the top and the best draws, and then again, they might not have anybody in the Elite Eight by the time it's all said and done. I mean, the way that it works out. But do you think that the ACC feels, I guess, a little bit vindicated based on the lack of draws they got?
Oh, I'm sure Jeff Capel feels absolutely vindicated, and I'm sure the league does as well. But at the same time, I'm one of those people that, because of the randomness of the NCAA tournament, we're not talking about, you know, a best of 7 series here. We're talking about one game at a time, single elimination. Because of the randomness that goes with that, no team makes shots from the outside for a full 6 games. You remember that Villanova team that, you know, just made an absolute mockery of the 3-point line on its way to the national title? That team shot, what was it, like 3 for 21 or something like that against Texas Tech in the Elite Eight from 3, but they were able to find a way to win. And I think that's why people always talk about having multiple ways to win games in March, is because at some point the shots don't drop, and you do need to have sort of that extra gear. And so I guess that's a really long way to say that, you know, I'm not a big proponent of taking how a conference does in wildly different seeded games and everything else and saying, well, this conference is better than we thought, this conference is worse than we thought. I did think the ACC was really strong at the top, and I wrote even before the season started that I thought the ACC had some teams like Clemson, and Wake Forest was another one that didn't get there but had that kind of potential that, hey, in a single elimination tournament, they might be able to win a couple games because they were going to be really tough to match up with.
So am I right to think that at some point during the season, even though they were usually in the top 10, that Duke had a stretch where you kind of not forgot about them, but it was like, huh. And we know that Gonzaga had theirs. Remember, there were thoughts they may miss the tournament. What have they done to put themselves in a position? Duke was a 4 seed. Gonzaga's obviously a higher seed too, a high seed. But what have they done to turn themselves around to where they're both now on the I guess precipice of being in the Elite Eight?
Well, with Gonzaga, I mean, it helps when you make everything. You know, I think that, you know, you look at how well they shot it, and some of it can be attributed to the fact that Kansas just did not match up well with Gonzaga defensively at all. But having said that, you know, you could even see the Kansas players throwing their hands up in the air sometimes, and that whenever a guy got an open shot, it went in. At one point, I think they were shooting over 80% in that second half. And, you know, when that happened and Kansas hit, you know, sort of its customary little dry spell that it's hit all season, Gonzaga ran away and hit. And when you're hitting shots like that, you can beat just about anybody. And I think Gonzaga's offense can compete with just about anybody. I do question the defense, and I wonder how that's going to look this week against Purdue. With Duke, the thing about Duke is Duke may be the nation's most talented team. When you look at, hey, these are guys that the NBA is looking at, their entire starting lineup are former 5-star players. And I don't think anybody else across the country can say that. And so it was one of those things where, hey, if you catch Duke on the wrong night and one of their guys has an NBA-type game, it's just kind of curtains for you. And Jared McCain has had some of those moments this year, and he wound up having one of those in the second round. I know NBA teams are really excited about his shot-making potential and the different things that he can bring. And so, when it comes down to it, if you've got more talent than the other guy and your talent's playing up to its potential, you're going to be really tough to beat.
One of the things about Duke as well is I was looking at their schedule as you were talking, Kevin. They have four of their losses are the three teams that are still playing. Arizona early, North Carolina twice, and then North Carolina State in the ACC tournament. So it's not like they have a couple like the Georgia Tech game, Arkansas, who we know was very much underachieving this year, Pitt, who is a team that felt like they should have been a part of it. So it's not like they have just like, oh my God, because their four of their losses are the teams that are still playing along with Duke. Paul?
Yeah, Kevin, I do. Here, I have secret information from the Gonzaga locker room. This is what Mark Few said. Just make shots. Just make them. Don't let them go out of the basket. Let them go in. And that worked. For Kansas, after the game, you heard Bill Self talk about, building the roster and that they made some errors along the way, and the way that they were dealing with everything, that they were going to look at it a lot differently. He'd been thinking about it for a month. Given his health scare last year and then the misses they had on this roster, how different do you think that this offseason will be that, one, he's not coming off a heart attack, and two, he has the perspective of they stepped in about every landmine that a Kansas team could step in?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think coming off what he was coming off, and then, the thing that nobody wants to talk about that's, the elephant in the room is Arterio Morris. Mm-hmm. Kansas would have been a lot better team this year had Arterio Morris played, but you knew that you were opening Pandora's box when you signed Arterio Morris. This wasn't something where you didn't have information on it. And so Kansas was down 2 scholarships from the NCAA sanctions. So they were down 2 right off the bat. They essentially lost the third with Arterio Morris. Nick Timberlake, the shooter that they brought in from Towson, didn't shoot at the level that he did at Towson. And Elmarco Jackson, who they brought in, who was a McDonald's All-American, wound up being a lot more raw than they thought he was. And just like that, you wind up in that situation where, Kansas is playing Gonzaga with 8 healthy scholarship players, with Kevin McCullough being out. And I think that when you look at Bill Self, one of the things that has made him a really great coach is his ability and willingness to adapt. And you look at the fact that, a lot of his better teams have actually been very different than each other, and the way that they've been built, the way that they've executed, and in a lot of ways, the things that they've kind of hung their hat on. And I think that the next part of that adjustment for him is going to be really attacking to make sure that they aren't shorthanded again. And so with Kansas's NIL war chest, which, my understanding is pretty considerable, I would expect Kansas to potentially add another elite recruit. Liam McNeely's out there, picked Indiana over Kansas and then wound up reopening. I think that's a very real possibility. And then, I expect Kansas to go full bore out on the transfer portal. And so instead of being a situation where, you wind up with these guys that you wind up with basically 5 guys that you trust to play, I think Bill Self is going to fill up the full 12 scholarships that he's got And it's basically going to be guys biting the hands off of each other to play next year.
Do you think that guys like like the guys that are eligible, I mean, DeJuan Harris is going to be back, he's already said, but Dickinson might be back, and then they have to wait and see on Furphy in the draft?
Yeah, I think Hunter Dickinson's going to be back. You know, a lot of his comments that he's given over the course of the year is sort of, I'm really enjoying myself. You know, there's a really good chance I'll be back unless, he kind of made it sound like it, depending on how the year ended. And I always took that, the way that he put it was, hey, if Kansas wins a national title, if Kansas goes to a Final Four, you feel like, you don't have anything left really to prove at this level, then that could mean an exit. But I would expect Hunter Dickinson back, especially with, the Kansas efforts in NIL there. I expect them to quite frankly make him a better offer than the NBA will. And I think Johnny Furphy, with the way his second half of the year, last quarter of the year, I guess you would say, with the way that went, I would expect him to come back too. I think that him coming to Kansas was supposed to be a multi-year deal. I think initially, I think the way that he kind of took off, I don't want to say surprised people, but his stock certainly rose there for a little bit, but ultimately, barring a lottery guarantee or something like that I don't think he's going to get, I would expect Johnny Furphy back at Kansas too, which raises some questions because you just, you didn't mention KJ Adams. He can be back next year too. And then are you really running it back with 4 starters from this year's team? I mean, and trying to run it back in a similar way. I think that's a fair question to ask if that's something Self even wants to try to do.
Kevin, quite the night in Memphis for Kelvin Sampson and the Cougars. I mean, not making the Sweet 16 would have been an awful big disappointment, but there they find themselves after Buzz Williams and the Aggies give a valiant effort to send that game to overtime. How much fun did you have watching that one?
Oh, that was unreal. I mean, it's, for not having a quote-unquote dog in the fight, I think everybody was biting their fingernails for Houston, with the Aggies being down, I think it was 12 right at the 2-minute mark. I think it was 11 with 90 seconds left. And to give that up, and how often do you see in tournament games or even in regular season games, when a team gives up that kind of lead and goes into overtime where, they're just going through the motions at that point. They've already been beaten. And, Houston, you add the extra layer on top of that of having 3 starters having fouled out, with Emmanuel Sharp fouling out right at the start of overtime. I don't see any way that Houston should have won that game in overtime, except for a guy named Jamal Shedd, who was just terrific. He accounted for, I think, 10 points in overtime, had 5 points, 2 assists, one of which was for a 3-pointer. And so when you look at how Shedd played, and of course you have the Hoosiers kind of Ollie moment with the walk-on coming in for a free throw after Shedd, fouls out and he makes 1 of 2 to kind of help seal the game. I mean, it was an incredibly mentally tough victory, and one that, quite frankly, I'm not sure there are 5 teams in America that win that game after the way that regulation ended, but the Houston Cougars are one of them.
All right, West Virginia, Darian DeVries, new basketball coach, was very successful at Drake. What are your thoughts about what they were able to do to move into at least a new era?
Yeah, I like the hire in general. I also like the hire when you're bringing your NBA son with you. Like I expect that he probably will be, in Tucker DeVries. I think West Virginia is a good job. It's kind of funny looking around at different message boards and everything else. DeVries was a guy that a lot of Oklahoma State fans, it felt like, kind of had circled and was on their short list. And a lot of them were kind of unsure about, why are we losing this guy to West Virginia? And I just want to remind people, West Virginia had maybe the best transfer class in the entire country before the Bob Huggins destruction last year. And, guys wound up leaving at that point, and West Virginia had the season it did. But I say that only to mention that apparently West Virginia's NIL coffers are alive and well, and they're willing to put in investment there. Obviously, we've seen West Virginia have success through the Big 12, several second-place finishes. I don't think they've won a Big 12 title just yet. But, it's a job where you can find success. I think DeVries is a really good hire. I think it doesn't help when doesn't hurt, when you're bringing Tucker DeVries in with you again, like I assume that he probably would. And I think there's a very real chance for him to surround Tucker with some pretty nice talent in Morgantown.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Great stuff as always. Always great to have you on, especially after another weekend. Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament starts on Thursday. Kevin Flaherty, college basketball national columnist and also college basketball insider. Real quick note, break, then Pat Nunley. Joe Tipton had this on Meechie Johnson. He's really good. Leading scorer for South Carolina. All right, he's entering the portal. You can see the stats in there, 14, 4, and 3 assists per game. He was at Ohio State for 2 years. Now look at you don't have, dang it. Do you have the response from the foundation, Garrett? I thought I sent that. I'm sorry.
I'll get it.
So that's the Joe Tipton report. This is the part about the NIL and how interesting it is. So he's entered the portal, apparently put something up on his Instagram. And then one of the responses, once that story by Joe Tipton was there, came from what is the foundation. The foundation is one of the NIL collectives for Ohio State, where he was before. And I don't think you could have done that prior to this lawsuit with Tennessee and Virginia, where you could openly then flirt with the player. And so that was it. This is too late now, Garrett. Don't worry about it. I thought I sent you that part, but that was
it. Is it's the eyes are right there.
I'm sorry. At the very top, there's the foundation, and so there we are with where we are when it comes to the NL. Pete Nako saying the Ohio State collective weighs in on Meechie Johnson's decision to hit the portal. Serves as a reminder: collectives can openly negotiate with athletes at the moment, especially with the NCAA halting all third-party investigations. When we come back, Pat Nunley, does Scott Drew need to change how he recruits or who he recruits or how they play the game? And this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on, and right now they're celebrating 25 years of business in Waco this month of March. And to celebrate, offering mad savings all month long. Like qualified buyers getting 1.9% financing for 72 months, but also saving thousands on a GMC Sierra SLT Crew Cab. That's right, save thousands right now on the brand new GMC Sierra SLT Crew Cabs as part of the 25th anniversary celebration over at Richard Carr Motors. Plus, military and first responders can also save an additional $500 on top of the already mad savings on the GMC Sierra SLT Crew Cabs. Also this month, get a 65-inch 4K TV with any car or truck purchased during their anniversary event. Even though we're halfway through the tournament at this point, still plenty of games to watch on a brand new 65-inch 4K TV or events in the future. So go ahead and take advantage of that deal as well as they celebrate big anniversary savings, 25 years here in Waco and Central Texas. And big savings extends not only to the GMC Sierra SLT Crew Cabs, but across the lot. Over 90 highly inspected used cars and trucks also with savings to be had. 100% credit approval is always the goal at Richard Carr, as they say yes when others say no. So for 25 years in Central Texas, they built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Go check out the brand new GMC Sierra SLT Crew Cabs. Take advantage of the great deals or go peruse through their pre-owned vehicles and all of the vast selection they have there as well, and walk away with a 65-inch 4K TV with your car or truck purchase during this anniversary event. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial Exit.
Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com with me, David Smoak. And tell you what, you guys keep rolling along. You do have yet another date, correct, for an online and live auction?
Yes, our next online and live auction will be Thursday, April 25th.
We've discussed how this has been unique and how people have reacted to it. Has that momentum continued as you've done more?
Yes, it's kind of half and half. We'll have a good amount of people there that are from the area, and then we have probably 40% that we ship out. And everybody that I've delivered locally to has talked about how much fun they had, and they want to know when the next one's going to be. We've gotten great feedback from the people that we've shipped to. They're all just so excited about this event, and they can't wait for the next one to happen.
Premium grade East Texas beef. Customers don't have to go out and buy their beef. TexasBeefHouse.com. From their family and their ranch to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely. And I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Pat Nunley, former Baylor. He's in the Letterman's Hall of Fame at Baylor, also analyst for the Bears and men's basketball, joins us on 365 Sports. And Pat, I know it's a long night, late night, but 3 consecutive years, and I know it's hard to advance, it's hard to win, but 3 consecutive years without getting past the second round. Do you think that Scott, as good as he's been, does he need to look at a couple of different ways to get back to maybe who they were 2021, 22?
My initial reaction to that is no. I mean, because his formula for success and getting the NCAA tournament, which he's done, 9 out of the last 10 years. He's been a 3 seed in each of the last, 3 years. And the list goes on and on, is so strong. And when you compare it to the other teams across the country, it's as good as it gets. And so, that run into the tournament, losing to North Carolina that year, I thought North Carolina was grossly underseeded. Losing last night was disappointing, but I really kind of felt like the upside, maybe the ceiling for this team all season long was the Sweet 16. And, had they not left, 8 points at the free throw line in the last 6 minutes of the game, I still had a great chance to win at the end. So I'd say no. I mean, I'd say go with what you know, and it's been very successful as anybody else in the country. I think we're a little spoiled by the national championship. I do, because that was lightning in a bottle. It really was. And that was a team that was played under the old rules, sort of. You've had transfers come in that had to sit for a year, and they sat for a year, and they got better, and they got better. And those days, I think, are gone. And so everybody's trying to adjust to that. But, our success here, and I think Baylor fans need to stop and just really reflect on this, is as good as it gets in college basketball. There are a lot of college basketball programs right now that aspire to be Baylor University.
Again, Pat Nunley with us, with Baylor men's basketball color analyst on the radio broadcast with us. Richard Carr Motors, Baylor Bear Hotline. Paul?
Pat, this team is going to look drastically different next year because, Jalen Bridges is gone. they've got other players that are graduating. And then you have Yves Misi and Jacoby Walter, who in a perfect world, would take an NIL contract and come back for another year and get stronger and better at the little things. But that's probably not realistic because financially they're about to hit a windfall in the NCAA. How unfamiliar do you think fans will be with the roster when it rolls around next year?
I think pretty unfamiliar, but again, get used to that. I think that's just the way it's going to be in college basketball. I think Ojanwin is probably coming back. And again, this is Nunley's opinion. I don't know. And I think it's too early for anybody to know. I'm hoping Langston Love comes back. So there will be a nucleus there. I think Caleb Lohner, there's a good chance that we'll get him back as well. So I think the nucleus is good. And by the way, the freshmen that are coming in are big time players. Now they're still freshmen, and there's a big difference between succeeding at this level at 18 or 19 years old versus 22, 23, in some cases 24 years old. With the COVID year, we're seeing a lot of that still. But it'll be, I think, an unfamiliar roster. I think the nucleus is there. I was talking to one of the coaches the other night on the way to Memphis about Rob Wright, the point guard coming in. He's special. I mean, he's got a great feel for the game. And then you could have the same sort of analysis about the other two guys coming in. And so you augment those three guys with some really handpicked transfers from the portal, much like Baylor did a year ago with Ray J. Dennis, who's a huge get. I need to add Jaden Nunn to that list of folks that are probably coming back. It's a good nucleus, but we need high performers at key spots. And the transfer portal is just where you're going to go get them.
Pat, how will you look back on just a kind of a summary of this year and as it came to a close yesterday, just sort of what was going through your mind as that game progressed and it became clear of like they might be in a little bit of trouble here?
Yeah, Craig, I knew that Clemson was really good. I saw them just beat the stuffing out of New Mexico Friday after our game. I mean, they dismantled them. And New Mexico, if you look at all the bracketologists, New Mexico was picked to beat Clemson and then beat us and advance to the Sweet 16. And Clemson had no trouble with them. So that was a senior-laden, graduate transfer-laden team that really understood how to play and was playing extremely well, which is what you got to do in the tournament. So we knew they would be a handful. But to answer your question, as you're thinking, after those 2 missed free throws and then we just couldn't get it back, and Clemson was going to win that game, it was interesting. You get pretty philosophical in a hurry because that's the last game of the year, and you're starting to reflect on how you feel about the season and how they did. And personally, I thought this is about where we thought they would end up. Now, I said a second ago, I thought the ceiling was a Sweet 16. I still believe that. And they were close. They didn't get there. But they were picked to finish fourth in the league. They finished third. Again, they were a 3 seed once again. So I don't think you can feel bad once you get the bad taste out of your mouth about last night, about this season. I think they ended about where people expected them to be. A lot of folks thought this was a team, because of its talent and its offensive firepower, could make a run maybe as far as the Final Four. I felt like it was going to take some special nights to do that, and last night just wasn't special.
Pat, Davion Mitchell was the perfect point guard. He could score, obviously, an incredible defensive player, and they had heart and soul with Maceo and Jared Butler and Vidal, et cetera, and I'm not trying to forget everybody else, and even Matthew Meyer, but are we past the time in basketball because of the portal and because of maybe the way the game is played that you can't have, for example, a shutdown defensive guard but he's not a starter? Does that make sense what I'm asking you?
I think so. I mean, when you're describing Davion Mitchell, I'm thinking of Jamal Shedd at Houston.
Yes, okay.
And Shedd's a 4-year guy at Houston. He came there. He stayed there. And I don't know any of this, but I'm sure they're taking care of him in terms of their NIL package for him. But again, I watched him again for a half in person last night. It's the third time I've seen him. He's a dog. Mm-hmm. I mean, that dude he's in Davion's league defensively. And, I don't know. Smokey, I don't, but I doubt you're going to go pluck him out of Houston or a place like that in the portal if he's otherwise being taken care of in terms of his NIL package.
Yeah.
But I think it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a good team. And obviously one that was very much, you travel with them quite a bit or are there a lot, very, very close. And it was devastating for them, like it is anybody that's all of a sudden gone. Their season is done. Just a little bit. How much did they miss what was a consistent type inside presence? Either what was missed more on offense or on defense?
Defense. I mean, I even said last night, late in the game, and I say this a lot, when Baylor's down like Baylor was last night, Baylor has the offensive firepower to come back, right? A 10-point deficit for them with 6 minutes to play. It's very doable. I'll put it that way. But defensively, you got to get key stops. You just do. And I thought at the end of the game last night, they did that. Clemson went almost 5 minutes, maybe 4, without a field goal at the last of the game. Now, they were able to get to the free throw line, but not enough to sustain the double-digit lead that they had with 5 or 6 minutes to play. So it was a matter of Baylor getting stops. They did, and then going to the other end and making enough shots that they would have a chance to win. And frankly, that's exactly what happened. But to me, too, the key is when you're not at your best offensively, can you still win a game? And I think for the most part, that was a struggle for Baylor. It really wasn't last night. They just weren't at their best at the free throw line. And I thought that was their undoing. You know, you can't leave, like I said a few minutes ago, you missed the 3 front ends of a 1-and-1 when the game's on the line. You're just not going to win. That's 6 points that you're just kind of flushing down the drain. And then those 2 at the end. And by the way, let me just say this. We're not in that situation without Jacoby Walter.
I agree.
And he missed those 2, but that happens. It just does. But it did happen. And that to me was, you get those 2 free throws down, it's a tie ball game with less than a minute to play. And there was enough difference between the shot clock and the game clock that even had they scored, as I recall, Baylor had a chance then again offensively to tie it up again.
Pat, they had this thing this year where they would, I've described it as they were kind of like Seabiscuit. They didn't know they were in a race until they were behind. And that usually comes with more veterans on the team where you can kind of break out of those habits. Is that, one of the risks you do have when you do have, even though they're 2 of your better players, but 2 of your better players that are freshmen and guys who, this 5 hasn't played together except for this year, that it's hard to build those things out in just a year.
It is. It's really hard to do that. But I think one of the reasons Baylor was pretty good playing from behind is that you get to a point where you just start playing, right? You quit thinking as much and you start playing more. And because of the firepower that they had and the talent they had offensively, they could do that if they coupled it with a couple of stops at the other end. But yeah, I mean, it's hard, particularly against a team like Clemson, who is one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country. If you get down 10, it's going to be really difficult to put them at the line if you have to, and still figure out a way to win the game. Yeah, I think that's part of it, is the inability. Offense is about rhythm. Defense is about principles. And so you've got to build chemistry. You've got to build rhythm offensively. And I thought towards the end of the year they had done that. They had become – they were always a really good offensive team. But towards the end of the year, I thought they were better. They were getting to the line. They got the ball to the rim. They played downhill at the guard spot. And when they're doing that, they're at their best. And second half again last night, they got to the line. And that's what you have to do. This team has to get to the free throw line, and they're really good at it. Got there last night, but just had nothing to show.
Yeah, they didn't make them. Thanks for your time, Pat. You're around the team quite a bit. I saw some of the interviews that Jack McKenzie in the post game, the locker room as well. It just seemed like a team that, like everyone else, devastated. But how tight of a group was this? And obviously, they're about to lose about half the roster.
Yeah, and I think this is a credit to the coaches. I've been around forever, and I think this, if not the best, it's one of the best group of just dudes, right, that have ever been in the program together. These are great kids. There were never off the court issues. They could be frustrating on the court at times, but these guys were close. They really truly loved one another, and all of the emotion after the game, Dave, I think you just spoke to this. All the emotion after the game was much less about the loss than it was about we're done.
Yep.
The experiences that we've been able to build together, even abroad last summer, they're over now. And guys are going to separate. Guys are going to move on. And I think that was devastating to them, maybe even more so than the loss.
Thank you, Pat. Great stuff. I know it was a long night turnaround as well. Pat Nunley, men's basketball analyst for Baylor, and also former Baylor guard with us on 365 Sports.
He's right about the free throws, and that's the thing that's been a bugaboo, and I don't know why it's remained a bugaboo. Of all the things that they've over time fixed with the program or improved with the program, that has been, I feel like,
front ends of one-on-ones.
9 times out of 10 when we talk about a loss, how many times out of those 9, or I say 9 times out of 10, how many times? How often is free throws a part of the conversation of why they lost that game? Point to any of them. It's almost every single time. It's almost every single time that's not like you lost by 17 and you just got beat. But in close games, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but I feel very confident saying that they would back up that nearly every single close loss comes down to free throws for Baylor.
The Kansas State game early in the year on the road, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I know Nunn had a front end of a one-on-one, missed it. I believe Dennis had 2 and maybe missed both. They were 9 of 19 at Kansas State free throw shooting.
I mean, that's just...
And how many of those might have been another 3 or 4 free throws because of the front end?
Because you missed the front end yesterday. And then, so there's how many countless free throws did you not have the opportunity to shoot? That's another 4 or 5 points because you missed the front end. And so, that's problem numero uno, and that's one that should be very simple. I know that there's going to be the overreaction of now, like, are they getting too many NBA guys or one-and-dones and all of that? But, I mean, that's also part of the appeal of bringing people to the arena is to watch Keontae George or Jacoby Walter, all these guys. You're certainly not better off without them. But I understand that when you lose and you lose abruptly and early that it's going to be think pieces about, all right, like, how do you reimagine the program or how do you put it under a microscope? I really do think the place to start and the simplest thing and the biggest reason for yesterday is just missed free throws. And that should not be another thing for another year. And yet it has kind of carried over now and become like a common thing with them at times that is just a weakness that is – it's like – I don't know. Like, how could you possibly overlook that, you know?
Last year I asked Coach Drew, like, do you ever think about, hey, if your free throw percentage is below 80%, I'm going to make you shoot underhand. And he said, look, and very frankly, he said, guys want to look cool, and that's not going to be it. I said, Scott, I said, you know what's cool? It's points.
Going to the Sweet 16?
Yeah, points are. You know, so I think, I don't know, look, they could call Rick Barry's available, right? I mean, you know, he's playing golf most days. We've had him on the show twice.
Yeah, I mean, look, man.
You know, like he's got time. Come and teach people how to do it.
And I don't know if you have to go to that route. But I mean, just for it to be a glaring factor in multiple losses for you here lately.
I think at least 3 or 4 for sure. They lost like 11 games, so that's almost half.
I mean, then they're looking at a Houston type record if that's on the other foot. You're looking at like having lost like 6 games as compared to double digits. So. That seems like it should be easily fixable, but I don't know why that's kind of been a continuous thing, and it certainly reared its ugly head yesterday.
Okay, 16 of 26 is 61.7%. You're going to have some guys that are better than others, but let's think about 2 free throws or 3, and Yves Missi, the one against Houston that would have given Baylor the lead as much as he was a part of coming back, and he's a hell of a player. And I wish he would come back, but if I was him, I'm sure I would be, especially if I'm going to be a part of the lottery. He's an incredible talent. But my goodness, but that free throw with 2 or 3 seconds to go against Houston when they came back, and then the 2 from a guy who's their best free throw shooter for the most part, But there was the Kansas State game's the one that I remember early on that set kind of a trend. When we come back, there is one Baylor team that is into the the Sweet 16. Nicki Collen and the Baylor women's basketball team, after a win against Virginia Tech, they're headed to Portland, and that's next. And this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. I got some new notes from Ted Teague, the CEO general manager, entering the last week of the Jeep Celebration event with deals like these. 2023 Jeep Compass Trailhawk for $29,990. A 2023 Jeep Renegade, $25,714. A 2023, the most decorated SUV ever, Grand Cherokee Summit, with over $13,000 off MSRP. $13,000 off MSRP. Also, the latest addition to the Dodge family, the 2023 Dodge Hornet GT, loaded up, $37,525 prices, plus tax, title, and license. Those are just some of the deals, discounts, and opportunities and options for you. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, with the Jeep Celebration event continuing. Those deals are there right now. Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marco's Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. And only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America. 5 locations in Waco. And the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Baylor women's basketball in the Sweet 16 with a win at Virginia Tech, now headed to Portland. And what a night it was for a lot of players, including Nicki Collen and her staff and program. She joins us on 365 Sports. Can you put into words what it was like just to kind of break through? And this is what you expect. This is what you want. And you want a standard even higher than this. But what was it like to kind of get that albatross at least off your shoulders for now?
Oh, gosh. I think Chad asked me that at the press conference last night, and I was thinking to myself, like, geez, I've only been here. This is only my 3rd season. So, it's not like we were searching for our first Sweet 16 in 10 years. But I also certainly it's just a benchmark. It's one of those things that you aspire to as a coach at this level. And, just really proud of the way that we've played down the stretch of the season. And, I think we went in confidently. And we knew, we really felt like, and I know Virginia Tech had lost Kitley and how important she is to them. But I also think that, we were good enough to beat them with her, and we wouldn't have felt any differently, had that not happened to her, which is always sad when you see one of the great players, go down. But, just excited for our program, excited for our players. We had a lot of players transfer here with the goal to be playing, this time of year and to be playing into the second weekend. So a lot of emotions. There was a little relief. I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't a little relief to reach this point because I thought we were capable and didn't want to underachieve.
Richard Carr Motors, Baylor Bear Hotline with Baylor women's basketball coach Nicki Collen. You mentioned down the stretch as far as the season. I thought last night, because there's been a couple of games that have gotten away from the team at the end of the game. I thought last night the execution and the poise, not just Jada Walker, but many others, was as good as I've seen down the stretch. Would you agree?
It was good. And I thought that, and it's not that we don't work on it throughout the season, but I think when we had the week to prepare for the Big 12 tournament, and then we had the time to prepare once the tournament ended for us, a lot of it, there were two things we focused on. One was late game execution. Every day ended with up 7, 3 minutes to go, down 4, 3 minutes to go. Those type of scenarios, as well as, got a lot of shots up and really wanted the girls to see the ball go through the basket again, because we just hadn't shot the ball well consistently in conference play. So, I thought we did a good job of executing. I thought all of our, and I felt this way all night long. I thought all of our ATO were good. I thought we got some easy buckets on baseline out of bounds. One that we just put in and shoot around yesterday. And so, I had to refresh it in the huddle, certainly, but just felt like we really executed. We got open. We listened, even down to, hey, we've got one foul to give. I thought Jada took it at the right time, other than the fact that then they didn't stop the clock and because, you go into those situations as a coach, that last time out, here's what we're running. When we make the free throws, like we've got a foul to give, they have no timeouts. Here's what we're going to do. So, I think obviously I showed a little frustration last night, but I think when you're in that situation and your opponent has no timeout, and then you have a 2-minute delay for, to figure out that it's not 0.8, it's 1.8, it's like it's giving a really good X's and O's coach 2 minutes to drop a play.
Coach, what do you learn about your team in a situation that they're on the road? They, it's even tougher. You don't have the advantage of being at home in the first round of the tournament, which, Baylor had gotten used to for a while. When you have those moments where, all right, I haven't seen them in this particularly yet, but now they've been dealt a hand and they've responded well.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's going to be an electric environment. I mean, easily the loudest building we've played in. I think it's got a lot of the feel of Foster without the bells and whistles, in terms of just everyone being right on top of their court. The student section was phenomenal. From start to finish, they were on us. Clearly they were on me, and I just felt like, that we had a lot of players respond. I thought we made big plays. I thought even Bugs being in foul trouble, she immediately checked in the game late, got an offensive rebound, put back. Sarah carried us early. I felt like Sarah really got us off to a great start, a confident start. And then Jada, and people were like, why were you so frustrated early in the game with the officiating? Well, you get to the second round in the NCAA tournament and they're calling barely hand checks. And it was, and I know letter of the law, whatever. But it was, I didn't know Jada Walker could go get 28. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not going to say that I thought that was the kind of game she would have. But what she did in 26 minutes because of foul trouble. and she got in foul trouble so early, I thought, on a hustle play. And I knew, as good as Georgia Amore was, like, we needed to get her in a million ball screens, and she was guarding Jada. And so we lost kind of that advantage when she got in foul trouble. And so I just thought, we were comfortable and confident playing to the hot person. We played to Sarah early. We played to Jada late, and people made plays in between. So I just thought our execution was really, really good coming out of timeouts. We just really were dialed in and listening to one another. And I think when you play in a hostile environment, when it's all you have is your little group, you kind of have to all be really, really together.
Coach, you just brought up Jada Walker and the night she ended up having. There was a cool clip, I think it was of Tony Green, after the game, and the fans are chanting Jada, and it's just, how cool was that? And also just, how did you kind of wrap your head around, you kind of touched on it, but how did you sort of wrap your head around that, and what was the conversation like with her afterwards?
Oh, she's such a phenomenal human. I mean, she's so quiet, which is, a challenge as a point guard. We have to tell her to speak up all the time. Her game is big, but her voice tends to be a little small. But I think, it was a bit of a build up and seeing like kind of what we've been working on come to fruition, because going back to summer when we got her, it was like, this kid's 15-foot pull-up is like a layup for her. I mean, it really is. And you can't say that about every kid, but it's like, as she struggled to shoot the three, during Big 12 play, we were just take the pull up. It's a great shot for you. And don't settle for the three, like go get to the bounce. And it was just, she was so rhythmic with it, and she was so shifty and drew fouls and made, those last three that she made, one, obviously to make it a 4-point game, which created a 2-possession game. And then to make the two when they had cut it to one. Like, that's as loud of a venue as I've ever been in terms of a kid stepping up and making free throws in that moment. And so it was great to see her teammates celebrate her, because, they're constantly challenging her to be louder so they know what they're supposed to be doing, since she's got the ball in her hands a lot. But they absolutely were all about celebrating her last night. And that is what it's about.
Scott, after the loss they had to Clemson, was talking about how difficult anytime it's the last game, and his team very close, especially with a couple of guys like Jacoby and Missy most likely moving on. But it was just that it was a tight team. Do I get the same? And a lot of people say things after they've lost, but it seems to be very, very real. Do you have that same type of group, it appears, right now with you?
We do have that type of group. And I also think that ebbs and flows. It's like, I always say that there's like dysfunction in every family, and you have to work through it. And it's like rarely is any team, is any office space like a utopia all the time. So like, I tend to be a realist. Like, you have to deal with things as the season goes along. I mean, you've got a lot of players that have individual goals and collective goals, and you have all these things. But I think when push comes to shove, these players really, our girls really care about each other, and they know they need one another. And I was really, really clear about this in the press conference last night, because, we don't have anyone talking about who's going to be a first round pick on our team. We don't have Melissa Smith. And so sometimes we talk about part of our mantra being sometimes you, sometimes me, always us, because we do have all these good pieces that at any given night, it can be your night. And we need to respect that, roll with that, feed the beast. You have all these terms in football and whatever. But it's not because we don't have really, really talented players. We may not have a first team all-conference player this year. We may not have an All-American. But I think we have players that are really, really good. And I don't want to downplay their individual talent, but I think collectively is where we're at our best. And so I think that starts, in the locker room and how they prepare and how they kind of value each other and lift each other up.
Nicki, you mentioned it's not like you'd been through a long stretch. Obviously, it was the emotions were great. Now what? Because you didn't get home. I think Shelby said you guys got home like at 3 o'clock in the morning. But you have a little bit of time, and yet you don't, because you got to turn around and travel out to Portland, play USC most likely, although Kansas is right there too. What is it about giving your players some legs and decompress if you have much time to do that?
Yeah, we'll, today we're obviously off. We did. I think it was more like 4 or 4:30 by the time we were home. But I was all about that. Let's get back and let's get a few hours in our own beds, because you only get so many before you travel again. And maybe that was selfish, but I don't think it was. Like, I just think everyone, when they're back in their comfort zone and their space, and I think that's important for that whole concept of being able to decompress. So we'll be off today. Tomorrow we're going to be really focused on, they'll all have an individual 30-minute shooting workout with their physician coach, and we'll just watch film. That's all we'll do. We'll get a lift, and I'm sure lift will be somewhat recovery driven as well. So we can. I do think one of our strengths, when I look around at other teams, even Notre Dame's big win today against Ole Miss, teams don't have a lot of depth. Teams aren't playing a lot of players. I think it's our advantage. It is one of our key advantages, and I know sometimes benches shrink in the postseason anyway, but I do feel like, we don't have 4 players averaging 35 minutes a game. We have 1 player averaging over 30 minutes a game, and we have people hovering there, but I think that's helped, kind of with fatigue. I thought Sarah had a stretch. She looked fatigued last night because I thought she was so solid for us, but her shot was short, and she was behind on a couple of defensive assignments. And like, once we gave her kind of a blow, she was kind of back to herself, and she made some really key defensive plays. And so, I think that's what we'll do. We'll balance that. We will probably leave late Wednesday, hopefully. But it's exciting. We get to play another week. I think that's the whole thing. Everyone always talks about, you watch these press conferences. I was watching Gabby Gregory at Kansas State, and she's like, it's just, it's my last game, and I don't get to go back in that locker room and get ready to prepare with my team for another practice, for another game. And it just really, really settles in really, really quickly. And so I think for all of us, it's like, it's just one more week. It's one more week. And this has been a goal of ours, and we've talked big all year long, not necessarily publicly, but, in our space, in our coaching huddles and on our team huddles, like we're talking about what our goals are and our expectations. And so we're where we want to be, so we get another week to grow and get better. And whether it's Kansas or whether it's USC, we'll be prepared.
Nicki, congratulations, Sweet 16. Good luck this week and handling it. The trip to Portland. We appreciate your time. Really was a gutty win. You too. Nicki Collen, Baylor women's basketball coach, and a gutty win against Virginia Tech. And she even admitted, Kitley was out. We mentioned that at the end of last week. They won the game, took advantage of it. And also, as she said, she felt like that was still a game they could win if Kitley had played, who was a star player for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, that was a big win for that program. That was a big night from Jada Walker, as she talked about, and much needed to help put them over the top and get into the round of 16. And first time for Nicki Collen as head coach to hit that mark. Granted, she's it's not like she's been around 10 years at this point or anything.
Said, 3 years, third year.
It's just 3 years, and so first Sweet 16, that's great, and definitely something to build off of. Definitely, though, at the same time, I think of the coach we had on the other day, the upset, Oakland. I keep thinking Detroit because Oakland's a Michigan school, so I keep thinking Detroit because of the city, but Oakland. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about, like, hey, get your media in now because you don't know how long that's going to last or whatever. Yep. But I think for Nicki Collen and company, you definitely want to look at what's next still. I mean, Sweet 16 is great, but you want to look at beyond, like, hey, can you get to the Elite Eight? That would be a massive deal to try and do that. But definitely celebrate the accomplishments along the way, and that was a big accomplishment for this basketball program under her guidance. So that was great to see, and hopefully they can keep building on that and keep those accomplishments coming.
We will have Evan Miyakawa in about 20 minutes or so. Let's do this, Garrett. Let's break. and then come back with a couple of other stories in sports, including Georgia running back ATN in trouble. And just a program that has had a lot of problems with. You want to keep it here?
Keep it here. We'll just go to it right now.
All right. So Trevor Etienne, Georgia running back, was stopped for what is alleged to be a DUI. And because of first of all, it's never good. But because of what they have been through with so many vehicular type incidents, and including people who have died, this is just, a young college kid, whatever. But it's just like a rash. It won't go away.
Well, they need to do something at Georgia to figure out why this is consistently happening.
You don't think they've tried?
But, they need to do something different. Like, whatever you're doing is not working, and,
Guys, we have Uber. You could only just say that before it's kids that or even adults who don't listen.
Yeah, but whatever they're doing isn't working. So they've got to change a new tact because it's constantly, it pops up. Every program has DUIs. The reason we hear about Georgia the most is they've had a lot between players, coaches have had DUIs, staffers have had DUIs. So it's a lot of different people who've had this. So, they've got to find a way to button that up, especially given the negative PR that surrounds it because of the deaths that happened a couple years ago.
Yeah, you would think of what's it going to take? Somebody dying? Oh, wait, that already happened. And that didn't seem to change too much, at least on the public surface that we're able to see. Behind the scenes, maybe that's different. Maybe it's changed for some people, but certainly out in front, to have another incident is just not a good look. Kirby Smart will get the benefit of the doubt. Georgia fans will, in some cases, for the low-hanging members of the Georgia fan base, they'll treat it as though it's, the newspapers are after them. They're when they're busy, according to LSU fans, attacking Mulkey, and then this fan base that they're attacking me and they're attacking that. I remember last time that was, coming after Georgia, just trying jealous of Kirby and the Dogs win another natty. It's or just reading police records, but you do you. So I think locally, I don't know how much, push for change there will be, but I think nationally this has been talked about now on 2-3 different occasions, and how much before it becomes an actual pattern. Kirby Smart's a smart guy. I'm sure he'll figure it out, but it's not a good look, and it is a bit of a disturbing trend that is not going to lead anywhere good. So yeah, hopefully this is, I'd say it's the last one for a while, but we said that a few months ago, and here we are. So yeah, it's weird how that keeps happening. I don't know why it's such a recurring issue there. I don't know, to Paul's point about the messaging, there's only so much a coach can say or do to prevent guys from going and making the personal decisions that they make. So if he's doing everything he can, then I don't know what you do about it, quite frankly, but it is obviously an issue that has happened more than it needs to happen in the span of a couple of years here.
All right, the other story it's a national story with Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers was going to have a media-type session, make some comments, and then possibly answer questions. Now it's basically no cameras. It will be on the Major League Baseball network on the what's going on with the $4.5 million to cover gambling. Now, no questions.
Well,
a statement.
Yeah, he said he would cooperate fully with the investigation, which not a surprise. This is it's really bizarre. And the thing about this is that if he's been himself gambling and betting on baseball, if he's not betting on baseball, then he just gets suspended. But if he's bet on baseball, then he gets banned for life.
Yes. And if they don't, all hell will break loose because they did it to Pete Rose.
Yeah. So
and he knew the rules going in.
Could either be the best news in the world for Pete Rose or the worst news in the world for Shohei Ohtani. And we don't know what happened. And if he is truly the victim of theft, which I hope that's the case, because if we as baseball fans are deprived of Shohei Ohtani because of a stupid decision, that's really going to suck.
It's a bizarre story, just kind of how people were trying to unwrap the layers of this onion last week, and this is what we were looking forward to, is hearing from Ohtani. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to obviously listen to it or digest much of it, but interested to, after the show, go and take a peek at what all's being said. But clearly, when you start to mention the possibilities of gambling and the biggest player in the entire world, which is what he is now. This has got disaster potential written all over it for Major League Baseball, but especially for, a bright career like Ohtani. So I'm fascinated to see if anything else comes of this. He seemed adamant, like, I did not bet on baseball. I did not, have any intent, blah, blah, blah. He denied having any involvement from what I could tell. So is this guy just the scapegoat, his buddy, or is this a big cover-up? I mean, it's a story that's salacious enough or open-ended enough that everybody's running with their theories on it, and who knows? I certainly don't. But, yeah, there's definitely a bit of a fishy smell in the air, but you can't, say for sure. So take him at his word, and I'm sure there will be more investigation done. And, man, if it were to come out on the other side that he, in fact, was caught up in this, then, yeah, we're talking about one of the biggest sports scandals of the modern era, undoubtedly. But for right now, it's just a guy making bad decisions that somehow seems to be connected to Shohei Ohtani. So, I'm very curious to see if this is where it kind of ends or if this is just the beginning of more, looking into the background of this exact story.
You know what's weird is that I'm not – when his name is connected to this, you're like, Shohei Ohtani? But everybody's got flaws, no matter what it is. And I'm not saying that there's anything with him that is a legal issue. I don't know. We don't know. That's why you look for the investigation to play itself out. But, man, you're like, what?
He's innocent until proven guilty, but there's enough unknown there to allow people to just speculate wildly over the last few days about his involvement or, what potentially could be. I mean, I saw Yakuza being thrown around.
Yeah.
It's like Yakuza.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The Japanese mafia, for those that don't know, and they have been very involved in sports and things like that, and scandals in that country for, they've been ingrained in that country for a very long time, and they've had their fair share of scandals. So, yeah, you see like Yakuza thrown around as though, perhaps there's involvement there. So, people are letting their imaginations run wild because the possibility of how big this story could be if it is, in fact, what people think it could be, but don't obviously have enough evidence to say that's the case right now, and he's denying any sort of involvement on the gambling side of things. So maybe this is just some lone wolf guy who needed to go sports gamble, I guess. I don't know. I don't relate to that, so it beats me. It seems like he ruined a pretty good gig, though, at the bare minimum, and maybe it's bigger than that, but at bare minimum, one guy made a very dumb group of decisions that led to him getting ousted out of a pretty sweet gig, I would say.
I did not want to bring up the Kim Mulkey drama in the same segment we had Nicki Collen, but a couple of you have brought it up. I've responded on just a couple of things about, again, going back to when she left and some of that. Metal, thanks for the response, Smokey. This is why I love 365. Famous host, not afraid to talk to the chat. We do have the Dragon, right, Paul?
Yeah.
I mean, it's you and me and the Dragon.
Yeah, we don't we really, if we actually gave this show a name, I was always rooting for Smokies and the Bandit, but because then that would make me Burt Reynolds. But if it was Smokey the Bandit and the Dragon, that would be a thing too.
Is House of the Dragons taken? Is that has anybody got that
House
name?
Of the Dragons, yeah. We need to get Craig some sort of brand marketing.
We got to do a T-shirt. I'll tell you in the chat room, if 365 Sports comes up with a T-shirt of the Dragon with a caricature of Craig, will you buy it for what would it be, Garrett, $20, $25?
Let's make that about $15, $20. Yeah.
Money would go to Paul and to me so that when we have to hire security when we're around with him, we could have, tip money for them to go do things for us.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's trying to wear a caricature of me, but that would be, I guess, something for folks who want to partake in something like that. I'm sure we could cook something up, but yeah, I don't know. I just call it like I see it.
Craig and I thought the Smoke Show was good, but then that wouldn't be good.
No, it wouldn't. I just have to do it. The one I really, everybody comes like
Emery said, let's just a Stanford basketball player. Emery, God almighty.
We get one guest a year that will come on and go, I've got a great idea for this show. It should be called Blow and Smoke. And I say, no, it should not be.
No, it shouldn't.
It shouldn't be.
No.
It should not be.
Not at all.
If it was just one of you, great idea. If it's me here, I vote that one no.
I agree, and my name would technically be involved there, but there's too much funny business you could have with that. But it's fun to have the chat involved, and we certainly appreciate everybody who's with us on a day-to-day or via replays or whatever. I think we made our time here pretty worthwhile, and just being college sports fans and talking about what we don't like and talking about what we do like and just having fun with y'all along the way. So we definitely appreciate all the support, however you pay that to us, hitting the like button or subscribe button or buying a T-shirt or whatever. We aren't here without you guys. Not trying to be all sappy with it, but it's true. So we appreciate you, chat.
So, by the way, from Shohei Ohtani's statement.
Okay.
Apparently, his former translator told the team what was going on, that he had a gambling addiction, and then they had a one-on-one conversation where he admitted to Ohtani that he had been stealing money from his account to pay for those things, and
this is from the statement just now.
From the statement just now. So the team, as soon as he found that out, he told the team, he told his representatives and said, hey, this guy's taking a bunch of money from me to pay for these gambling debts. Let's make sure we get this, which is why you heard this statement about the theft. Now, if Ohtani is lying, that's where the rubber will meet the road. And they'll find out one way or the other, But I don't, it appears right now, if this statement is true, then yes, he's been the victim of a theft, and it's a terrible thing. And this guy who was a liar anyway, lied about going to UC Riverside, and UC Riverside's like, we never even had anybody who went here.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I just you talk about screwing the pooch when it comes to having a golden gig. I mean, to be Shohei Ohtani's translator and just travel around with him as he's the greatest baseball player in the, if not more than that. With the money that he's making, I mean, who knows? But I mean, what a stupid decision.
He's the only Japanese guy on the team, right?
No,
I mean, with the
Dodgers?
No, with the Angels.
Oh,
last year he was there. I believe he was
last year, I'm
like
thinking the Dodgers
So
now.
last year with the Angels, and he went over with the Dodgers because
Right.
he was,
Who's
he's their friend.
Japanese
So
players,
like when you're in this country, you've got a guy, you don't really speak the language all that much with Ohtani, which Ohtani doesn't. And this is your voice to the rest of the team, and the one guy that you can speak to in your native tongue most of every day without having to get on the phone face to face. You have a pretty close relationship and a friendship with that person. And you better, because they're your outlet to the rest of the people in the building. Yeah. And so, I mean, I can only imagine like the shock and how you get comfortable with that.
Well, it's a terrible betrayal if in fact that's exactly how it went. I mean, it's a terrible betrayal of Ohtani's trust and just that entire relationship. And so again, just to talk about a guy fumbling the bag and a golden opportunity, if that's the case. And you know what? I hope it is, because I don't want Shohei Ohtani's career in baseball to get totally derailed by a gambling scandal. I think that would be awful. I think that'd be awful for baseball as a whole. I think it would be another steroids era type of a situation, not in totality, but in terms of just a big black mark. To have the best player in the entire league caught up in something like that in this age would be horrific for him and for the sport. So yeah, I hope that's not the case. Now, is there a side of me that is a lover of chaos? It would be like, man, the modern Pete Rose scandal, like how fascinating would that be to see unfold? A part of me, but it doesn't trump the side that just doesn't want to see a great player ruined by gambling scandals, because we've seen that. We saw how pathetic that can get after a while too. And the last thing I want to do is see Shohei Ohtani doing Pete Rose videos 30 years later.
Rose is doing a video. Zach Gelb from CBS Sports. Rose said, I wish I had an interpreter back in the 70s and 80s, as he would have been my scot-free.
Yeah.
But, well, we'll see how this eventually winds down or what happens in the end on whether Ohtani, if there's anything more of that. They'll find out. The investigators will, just like they've done with other investigations they've had along the way.
And I just want to touch real quick on the Mulkey thing. I want to see the report before I have any opinion on anything.
Yeah, I was going to add that to the end.
There's all this talk, there's all this buildup, and I'm sorry. You're innocent until proven guilty. I know that that's not how it's played out typically nowadays in public, but can I see a situation where there's something scathing and damning and Kim gets hurt by that? I can see that. Can I see where this is another overblown article? Do y'all remember, Do y'all remember Pete Thamel's Oklahoma State article?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We kind of forget about that, but that was made to be a real big deal, and it turned out to be a real big nothing burger when all was said and done. And so we've seen things get hyped up only to fall flat, and Pete Thamel now has gone beyond that, but that was a bad look back then. And so I think that's probably not the case, but I'm just going to reserve judgment until I see whatever this is about.
Here's the thing. The only person who's hyped it up is Kim. Not only, but
at
the
this
one
point,
who's given it the most hype is Kim. And there's a lot of factors in here. First of all, her threatening to sue the Washington Post. I'm sure that they responded to that with ooh, that. Believe me.
That's what Bob Thompson tweeted on Saturday.
A basketball coach is not going to scare the publication that did the Pentagon Papers. Okay. Yeah. That's not going to scare them. It's not going to scare the owner of that publication now, who's Jeff Bezos. So that's all window dressing, and that's Kim trying to get out ahead of a story. I can't imagine that anything in this story would be anything that would shock anybody who knows anything about Kim. I don't think it would.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be like she talked bad to her players or something. And I'm like, okay, of course.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that Kent Babb is doing a story about Kim and quite possibly her relationship with the best player she'll ever coach. No offense to anybody she's going to coach, but Brittany Griner is a once-in-a-lifetime type basketball talent that you have. And the fact that that's gone so south, especially the way that Kim handled it when Brittany was in prison in Russia without very much public compassion. Whether that was true or not about how Kim felt, publicly she didn't make an effort to say that, so it raises a lot of questions
and we're going to get into
people
that.
Who don't know.
I have my opinion on that. It's not the time to do it because we want to get to our next guest, but on the Griner and Mulkey relationship, could she have handled some of those questions a lot, like you said, with compassion? The compassion that was shown to her with that article by Kate Fagan in the ESPN the magazine sure wasn't there, but I'm not defending Kim. All right, when we come back, we will hear from Evan Miyakawa. How has what all he kind of crunches, how has it worked out for what he sees now in the Sweet 16? Evan Miyakawa next from evanmia.com. This is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC. Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. 365 Sports. The Sweet 16 is set in men's basketball. Women will be by the end of the night. Games going on, in fact, the rest of the day. Evan Miyakawa, Evan Mia, M-I-Y-A, joins us on 365 Sports. Evan, you have all these numbers, all this analytics, data, etc., and I know you're crunching them, getting ready for the next week, and a lot of work still to be done. What did you learn about your rankings and what we now have among the Sweet 16?
Well, for all the action that we had in the first 4 days of the tournament, the 16 teams that we're left with are pretty chalky. And what that means is a lot of the strongest teams in the field have taken care of business. In the tournament, I put a graph up that basically looked at how each team in the field was likely to fare based on how far they could go in the tournament. And I had a category of 9 teams that I labeled as title contenders, and 8 of those 9 teams comprise of half the Sweet 16 field. The only team in those 9 that's not in the field is Auburn, who lost their first game against Yale. But those other teams are UConn, Purdue, Arizona, Tennessee, Houston, North Carolina, Iowa State, and Duke. And they're all still here. And so I think that bodes pretty well for just the underlying numbers, giving a pretty good job of figuring out who's going to get far. Right outside of that zone, the next 3 best teams are Illinois, Gonzaga, and Creighton. They're all still here. Marquette's still here. So, that's my main takeaway, is that the best teams, for the most part, are still here and are, still in contention for the title, kind of as the analytics predicted.
All right. What did the analytics tell you about NC State?
What an incredible run that they are on right now. It kind of gives me shades of Oregon State a couple years ago when they won the Pac-12 tournament, got a 12 seed, and got to the Elite Eight. NC State has been similar. They were on a losing streak heading into the ACC tournament, won 5 games in 5 days, and now they're 2 more games further on a 7-game win streak in the Sweet 16, facing up against a Marquette team. They're really the only big surprise in the Sweet 16 at this point. They're the only double-digit seed left, and it's just been an incredible run. At some point, you have to wonder, if they're going to fall off a cliff, but, for whatever reason, Kevin Keats has been playing well. They've been surprising everybody. Granted, they did have an easier second round matchup against Oakland, given that Oakland beat Kentucky. So it'll be a much tougher task against Marquette, in the next several days. But I'm very impressed by them.
Evan, I don't think shocking is the right word, but how surprised, or I guess not surprised, were you about Clemson and their performance and win over Baylor?
Not that surprised. So this has been kind of my thing with Baylor all season. Is I love Baylor, and I did think that they had potential for a deep run, but in general this season, the model that I use to measure team strength, the biggest thing for me with Baylor has been that they've done a great job of beating teams that are kind of significantly below them. Bottom half of the Big 12, non-conference opponents, that sort of thing. But when they face teams that are more in that top 20, top 25 area, compared to what they were expected to do based on how good of a team they are, they've kind of struggled. And so against Clemson, I think Vegas had the line maybe -4, -5 going into the game for Baylor, but I only predicted a 2-point win for Baylor because of the fact that Clemson has been a strong team and Baylor typically has been a little bit more underwhelming against, more top tier competition. I think Clemson falls in that category, even though they weren't, a top 4 or 5 seed, but they've been really strong recently. And so I expected it to be pretty close. Turned out obviously that Clemson played much better than Baylor in that game, but not really that surprised to see Clemson winning.
They did beat who they were supposed to beat. I think the only game that might have been like, whoa, was, I would think, Kansas State when they lost that game early in Manhattan, and then maybe at home to TCU. But other than that, most of the games they lost to were teams that were considered quad one or whatever. Their record in quad one was pretty good, but yeah, Michigan State beat them up. Duke beat them up. And of course, there were a handful of others. In the end, with Iowa State, Houston still alive, which is not a surprise, your thoughts about what Houston and A&M was like, and how do you try to calculate that with your analytics of what that score could have been if everybody remained eligible and not fouled out?
Oh man, that game was wild. So real story last night, Houston went up by 12. I turned my TV off and did other things because I thought Houston had taken that game. I got a text from somebody 45 minutes later saying, wow, that was crazy. And I was like, what did I miss here? Went back and watched the tape. So quite an amazing comeback for Texas A&M, hitting a buzzer-beating three to take it to overtime. And then Houston somehow manages to still win that game despite having their top four players all fouled out by the end of overtime and had a walk-on go to the line and have to make some free throws. But yeah, that was just crazy. I can't think of another time when, a team as good as Houston has had, arguably their four best players, missing at the end of a game, not to mention that they have two other players who are out for the season at this point, who are in their top six rotation in Terrence Arsenault and Joseph Tugler, who were already unavailable for this game. So pretty wild stuff there, to be honest.
Do you see anybody, and I'm asking this because it's about UConn, that is far ahead of anyone else because they seem to be playing, them and Purdue seem to be playing the overall best, but that really doesn't matter once we get to Thursday once again?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's UConn, Purdue are a cut above the rest right now. That does not mean that they are a lock to make the Final Four and meet in the national title game, though I'd love to see that happen. Just because of how strong the field is. I mean, it's mostly all the ones and twos are still there. There's a good number of threes and fours and fives. So, they have their work cut out for them to get to the Final Four. But in general, they are a cut above the rest right now in terms of how strong they are, in terms of their chances of winning the national title. For me, I would be a little concerned about Houston. Most of the other teams in the tournament have had really good showings. Arizona has been dominant. Tennessee has taken care of business. Iowa State's looked great. Duke has looked really good. That sort of thing. But Houston, they've not been playing great recently. I think they're probably in the bottom 30 in the country right now in terms of momentum, which is a metric that I quantify. So in other words, they're not playing their best ball recently. They have depth issues, and they're coming up against a Duke team that's playing really, really well. So I expect that to be a tough fight for them. If they want to get to a Final Four and potentially further, they're going to kind of need to take it up a notch from where they've been the last several weeks.
Evan, what does the Iowa State future look like, the forecast on the Cyclones after getting through these first two rounds?
Well, I think they've looked pretty strong, and certainly their defense right now ranks as the number one best defense in the country. So, any team that's going to beat Iowa State is really going to have to make it through a grind out battle. I think the tough part for Iowa State is that they, the way that the committee seeded them, being in the same region as UConn, and they're going against a really strong Illinois team in a 3 seed in the Sweet 16. I mean, potentially Illinois and then UConn, that's about as tough as it gets for, Sweet 16 Elite 8 matchup. So, I don't think they're likely to get through that unscathed, but I definitely think they're a very strong 2 seed for sure. If anyone can do it, it's them because of their style of play and their stifling defense, but it's going to be a tough road for them.
So the portal is open. It opened when they started the tournament, the week of the tournament. You're keeping up with that, right? And how do you keep up with it with hundreds and hundreds of names that are entering the portal?
Yeah, thankfully I don't have to do the work to manually add each of those players to my database. Okay. I have some other sources that, I can kind of aggregate those names as they're entering the portal. That would be an absolute mess given, how quickly players are entering the portal these days.
All right, so fix Baylor's roster for next year just on the what kind of guys do they need to get?
Oh boy, honestly, I don't have an answer for that. Haven't really thought about anyone's roster construction for next year. Still trying to stay focused on the games we have ahead. So I feel like that's a conversation for another day.
All right, Evan, you said this was nearly chalk. NC State, of course, is the only double-digit team. Were you surprised how calmly it kind of just I don't know what the word is. Everything just kind of calmed down, because normally there's still a team or two that kind of fires it into the Sweet 16. It just seemed like it settled down pretty quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, not only did we have most of the favorites make the Sweet 16, but there was relatively little drama for most of them winning their games, apart from a couple here or there. The thing that I love about the tournament is if we have one bad, unexciting round, that typically means that the next round is going to be electric, because that means you're going to have really, really good matchups in the next round. And when you look at the matchups that we have on Thursday and Friday, I mean, Purdue versus Gonzaga, Tennessee versus Creighton, Houston Duke, as we had already talked about, a rematch of the national title game between UConn and San Diego State. I mean, the storylines galore all across this thing. There's the potential for North Carolina and Arizona to match up in the Elite Eight. That would be incredible TV with, North Carolina playing, former star Caleb Love, who's now with Arizona. I would love that. So, just because it was a little melodramatic Saturday and Sunday, probably sets up for a very crazy, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday this coming weekend.
All right, Evan, good luck crunching. Oh, I have to ask you this, because you were going to join us last week, and then all of a sudden things started happening with your site, and it happens. It's happened to us. Mine, I have a high school site. How traumatic was that for you, and how long was that able to get fixed by you or whoever?
Well, it was a good problem to have. My website crashed because too many people wanted to use it.
There you go.
So, I had been kind of trying to plan for that the week leading up to Selection Sunday. Thought I would have kind of an upgraded server in place. Couldn't quite get it done in time, and then it ended up kind of struggling there. So I was able to get a solution in place probably midday through Monday, and the rest of it's been smooth sailing. Thank the Lord. But it's a good problem to have when your site's popular. So I'm not complaining about that.
No, I tell you, I have a high school site, and back in the day when there wasn't so many options for scores, I would sit there and load that thing up late on Friday, and because of again, people wanting to get on there for information, it would crash. Like inevitably, like the first week of every high school season, no matter how much extra oomph I'd put in it. So I felt for you, man. Thanks for your time, Evan. Good luck the rest of the week.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Evan Miyakawa with us on 365 Sports.
I remember just a funny story. So when we found ScoreStream was a beautiful thing that was created by someone who should be canonized by the Pope.
I agree.
That had tons. I mean, it's a great thing for a website. Whoever came up with it and did it, I honestly, God bless you. The first year we used it, it had a couple little glitches, but since then it's really been kind of flawless. And I remember calling Zach Burke, who used to help you out. He had left the company at that point, but used to help you out putting those scores in.
Deep into the night.
Deep into the night. And I said, hey, guess what I found? I found a thing that'll do this for us. And he hung up the phone. He just hung up the phone.
He was so pissed that it wasn't 10 years ago.
He goes, how long do you think this thing has been around? I said, not long, but long enough to where if we had found it 2 years ago, it would have
saved you a lot of time. Yeah.
Greg, remember those days we would do a broadcast, and sit out in the parking lot, or do a show with scores, Randy Johnson, you, and we would enter those things in individually throughout the night. I mean, usually it took about 45 minutes to an hour, calling out scores, entering them in the site, and it was every single game after we finished a broadcast.
Yeah, that's what you wanted to do. That's what you wanted to do. You wanted the big old long scoreboard show, and so that's what we did. Yeah. And I mean, there's some good memories attached to that. A lot of time doing that on Friday nights, and glad that somebody came to the point in the road where you could just create something that does that all automatically. It's like so many other things in our lives. That's another convenience that we definitely have, is not having to manually call up press boxes to get a 3A football score.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
that's something that I definitely don't think we're missing out on the good old days as far as that goes, for sure.
Yeah, Garrett, I'm sure you've been there where you call somebody to get a 2 or 3A football score, and you've just missed the time where everybody's still in there, and it's just the janitor, and you're like, "Hey, do you know what the score was?" "Oh, hell, I know we won."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Great, congratulations to you."
I had this,
what was the score? More than the other guy.
Call the Dairy Queen.
Yeah,
basically what it is.
Every score for Dangerfield, and I still think I can remember their field house number, like 903-645-3465, whatever. But I had Dairy Queen because they would know. And it was like a mile down the road from Tiger Stadium, which I think is named after Dennis Alexander now.
But, you know, when Smokey and I started working together, the only concession I think I got on what we were going to do on Fridays, because we did have to change a lot of things that we were doing at the radio station. It wasn't the best way to do it. It wasn't the most profitable, but we already had a scoreboard show. And Smokey said, well, then you and I, after the game, will stay in the press box and do the scoreboard show. And I said, you can.
Yeah, you guys were just gutless.
I'm not doing that. I said, I have no interest in doing that after all the things I'm doing all day.
It's a different time period, man. Like, you didn't have a Twitter app to go look up everything. So, like, you had a scoreboard show in the 90s because that's the only way to find out. I mean, you couldn't get the paper to the next day, and local TV websites, I mean, you see how those are ran. Those are so half-assed across the country, so they weren't very good early on, and you certainly weren't working with the staff on a late Friday night who was pumping in the scores as soon as they rolled in. I mean, it was the only way to get scores out fast was to basically call people up and get them and then spit them out over the radio, and that was how you did it. But now, it's totally unnecessary. I mean, really, because unless you just want to do it. What's the score of the Gilmer game? Okay, cool. That took me 5 seconds. I don't need to listen to the radio for it.
Friday Night Lights or what is it, Texas Dave Campbell's magazine. They've got hundreds of people working on those reporting scores, and you just hope to God the ones you have. But I got an adrenaline rush out of those scores, and we'd get a coach on after a big win. It was fun. But, that time absolutely passed. When we come back, by the way, Thursday, we will be in Frisco. At the Star, the Cowboys headquarters, Frisco, the Big 12 NFL Pro Day, or the Pro Day for NFL prospects, will be at the Star in Frisco. We will be there throughout most of that day, and then also have coverage that runs a little bit into what we can keep and save and use the next day on Friday. And we'll be there inside the stadium where the players are doing their drills.
So if you want us to run down anybody in particular, let us know. Send us a text, 254-339-1122. There's like 162 prospects there. So
137.
137.
I think I just happened to just pick up that paper.
137 prospects. So I doubt we'll get them all. Not that we won't try, but if there's somebody you're curious to hear from, I'd like, Emery and I will make a special effort to run down and get them and bring them up to the table. The Big 12 has hooked us up here. I kind of just took a shot in the dark because I didn't know if anybody else was going to do it or what their plan was for it or how they were going to hype it up, because this is the first one. And again, you don't know until you ask, and we got yeses all the way around.
Friday. Yep. You can't be told no or yes if you don't ask for the information. 137 prospects. This is from back about a week ago from the Big 12 Conference that will be there in the conference-wide Pro Day at the Star in Frisco.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be cool to get out and go see that. How it all operates, I'm curious about. I mean, I don't think we're going to be there for every single thing. I mean, maybe we are, but there's a long day. I mean, there's a lot of players that are working out.
We'll be there whenever we get there.
I'm saying I don't know that we need to be there for like weight measurements at 7:45 a.m. or anything. But
Paul and Garrett do.
Right.
Emery does.
So there's like that aspect of it where it's going to be truly a day-long thing, but we'll cover the bulk of it. And then I know they're going to do another thing on Saturday.
Yeah.
We're not carrying over to that, but I guess you kind of have to split it up when you have as many prospects as there are. And I'm curious how it works. I mean, with all these schools combining forces to get as many scouts out there as possible, you would think there has to be all 32 NFL teams represented. It would be stupid to not have a representative there if you were one of the 32 teams with all those players you can watch at one time. So I'm very curious about how it works and what the turnout is for it and what the observations or the opinions are afterwards. But glad to be a part of the first one in some small way, and look forward to being out there at the Star.
There won't be everybody the first day.
Right.
Because some are going to be working out to split it up where they'll be having stuff, drills, et cetera, measurements on Saturday too.
Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and defensive backs, I believe, in the first day.
Now, all the skill people.
What
we
prefer to probably see on the first day.
I think it's just because they can split up the catering bill a little bit better on Saturday.
Yeah.
If you put all the linemen together, you know that you can just, back up the truck on Saturday.
Double the order on Saturday,
yeah.
All right, when we come back, we'll have Paul's top 5. This is 365 Sports.
Rev up your excitement. Celebrate the spirit of adventure during the Jeep Celebration event. Join us at Allen Samuels in Waco as we roll out incredible deals on rugged and reliable Jeep vehicles you love. Seize the moment and drive home in the new Jeep of your dreams. With special financing options and exclusive offers, there has never been a better time to explore the world of Jeep. Hurry in, the savings won't last long. Visit AllenSamuelsDCJ.com and see them firsthand only at Allen Samuels in Waco. Let your adventure begin.
Come by, let's be friends.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 thoughts on the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, which was very fun, even though we did kind of get some predictable outcomes. Number 5, a lot of teams with upside if they can keep it together next season. I'm thinking about Texas A&M in particular here, in that they played their best ball in the last couple weeks. Obasike was someone who was averaging like 4 points a game before he really found his stride and his confidence. And look, A&M has the resources to keep some of these guys together and keep guys out of the portal. But there are several that if they can keep it together, like even though they might be out right now, if you can keep the nucleus together, Baylor is one of them, but we heard from Pat Nunley that's unlikely, that if they can keep that together, they can really grow. I think that's one of the fun things to watch about the NCAA tournament is, okay, who showed out well well for the first game, maybe even the second game and lost, and can really come back and storm next year. Creighton is a team that stands out to me. Well, of course, they're still in it, but Creighton stands out to me as well.
I have them. Well, you're talking about next year, but I did pick them to go to the Final Four this year, too, as a 3 seed. I love that McDermott, what he does. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so.
I mean, I think the IF is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this day and age.
Yeah.
That's the hard part is how can you keep these guys together and knowing full well that while these tournament games are being watched by millions of people, who are amongst those millions? College staffs from all over the country watching and going, that dude from Creighton looks pretty good, or that guy from, wherever looks pretty good. And so with the portal and NIL, it's just a bigger challenge than ever to keep teams together. But you're right. Yeah, A&M's a great example of this. What a great run and finish, although it came up short. And I really thought once they got to overtime, they were going to win that game. I just didn't know how Houston, shorthanded with all that momentum swing, how they were possibly going to win that game. And to their credit, they did. But I definitely think there's a great buzz, no pun intended, now surrounding A&M basketball moving forward, whereas he was a high-profile hire, but it just didn't really, launch right away. And you're kind of thinking, is this going to be good over?
I think when they started sliding at the end, there were, kind
of what's going on.
Just a little murmurs.
Yeah.
I love Buzz Williams, and I told this story. It's been documented. He was the gym, basically, maintenance guy at Navarro College in Corsicana when I used to set up to do games, and I did a show on Wednesday if they played on Wednesday, and he was a great guy. I never would have thought that one day he was a millionaire coach at a couple of different locations and now A&M.
Well, that's why you have to be mindful of the way you treat people, right?
Yeah.
Because that Jim guy is turning out to be like the multi-million-dollar head coach at Texas A&M all these years later. But, I think A&M's got a really bright future that you feel much better about given how they closed so strongly. And, just what a game that was last night.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 4, mostly things went chalk. I mean, for the most part, they did. I mean, all the 1s and 2s are still in. We're still at that point in the tournament, or we're at the point in the tournament where, we were kind of hoping for maybe more upsets. But I don't think it evidenced one way or the other. I just think that this is the way that the teams kind of separated this year.
I think that we get caught up in those first and second round or first day and second day shockers. Those are the ones that bring that attention that otherwise, it's going to be the same teams in the end, and it might be. I thought it was even despite the game like Texas A&M and Houston, or even a couple of others where there were really some great games. There were a handful of them. I thought yesterday was boring as hell. I thought it just kind of okay, they're up 33, they're up 27,
A&M,
they're up.
Notwithstanding, A&M Houston was great, but and I mean, San Diego State and Yale was a total blowout,
ass kicking,
but I mean, things have pretty much gone chalk. I guess what Auburn losing threw a little bit of a wrench into the East, but a very minor one at that. The South was crazy because of James Madison winning and NC State winning and Oakland winning, and so you had an 11-14 there with NC State and Oakland to get into the Sweet 16, which was pretty wild. Grand Canyon, man, what a run for them, man. They made it really interesting against Alabama. That was actually an exciting game. And Alabama just pulled away there at the end. But, I mean, Grand Canyon, that was an exciting, fun team to watch. So they made a little bit of noise.
Scrappers.
Very much so. Very much so.
The Drew boys and brothers out.
Yes, got to mention the Drew family involved in that one as well. And I was thinking is brother gonna got in the Sweet 16, have a little bit of that trash talk, but then again, Scott's got a national championship. So, I was surprised. Did y'all see how big their crowd was? I mean, I guess it's a big school, in the
Grand Canyon's. It's a weird. It's a strange.
It's not
how they're all together.
Typical setup.
Yeah,
but I mean, they had a massive amount of people
loud,
there,
and they're almost maybe the college basketball equivalent of UCF football fans.
Yeah.
They are, when they're there, they're there. I'm not saying there's not other rowdy crowds, but it kind of seemed like that's got a little bit of that same vibe.
But they just had I don't know how many people are aware of Grand Canyon University, and they had a massive turnout. But there was some fun things, but mostly it went chalk, as you said there. And so not in the way of a bunch of upsets.
Number 3, the SEC and the Big 12 were more vulnerable than most thought. Auburn, Kentucky, Baylor got a win and then lost, and then there's a lot out there, and you go in puffing your chest about a conference, and then you don't perform. That's why, Craig, I like to subscribe to your theory that, look, it only matters, like this whole, like the conference is better, and that's true in the regular season, but once the tournament games start, it's about who's across from you. It's about that day. It doesn't matter what happened, in February. It doesn't. Like, it matters about that day.
The Big East and the ACC can hold their heads very high and possibly for yet another week. But, man, they have had a hell of a run with a chip on their shoulder, too, entering the tournament.
Yeah, but, I mean, if you don't have anybody in the Final Four, then who cares how many you had in the Sweet 16?
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, after one weekend, ACC's definitely got the bragging rights. I'd say the other would be the non-Power 5 schools because they have a handful of teams that are still alive. But the ACC's got the most amongst the power conferences. Everybody, I think I did this right. Every power conference could have a national championship matchup featuring just their two teams, with the exception of the Pac-12, because they've only got one team left. But everybody else, it is also Arizona, but everybody else could, in theory, have like Iowa State, Houston in the Natty, or Bama, Tennessee in the Natty, or so on. And obviously the ACC's got multiple combinations. But yeah, I mean, it's about matchups and. It's about results, and the SC and the Big 12, for all of the pomp and circumstance, especially surrounding the Big 12, has not quite lived up to their billing. But I do think if Houston or Iowa State goes and wins the whole dadgum thing, then we're not talking about this, and we're talking about how great they still are and how it's the best league in America still, because you'd have had another national champion. That's really what matters at the end.
Number 2, coaches lose and then take big jobs. DeVries to West Virginia. Dusty May to Michigan, which we didn't talk about, but that's pretty huge, and has sent the Indiana fan base into a tizzy because he was a team manager for Bobby Knight, and they thought, well, Dusty May's next job is going to be back home in Indiana, and now it's in Michigan, and then, of course, the Washington State coach going to Stanford.
Kyle Smith,
thank you. So that's already happened, and there'll be more to come in the coming days. Louisville's still unresolved, although I have a friend, Chad Haynes, a viewer who contacts me all the time and said that he had a friend that was convinced. He's like, Jay Wright's not on CBS this weekend.
No.
He's in Lexington, Kentucky. So I flipped over to TNT. I took a screenshot and said, well, no, he's not ever been on CBS. He's on TNT. He's talking right now.
Yeah.
He's not in Lexington. Yep. And if Jay Wright left Villanova because he wasn't ready to grab NIL for Villanova, it just wasn't his thing. He was ready to be retired. He'd won national titles. He'd done all he can. He's going to go to Kentucky? No. Like, it's going to be even crazier there. So
I tell you what.
Yeah. Louisville, Kentucky specifically.
Well, Louisville, Kentucky. He was in Lexington waiting for them to fire Calipari, and they're going to take that job.
I think Jay Wright is a great ad, and was when they first hired him. He does a great job on those sets. You have your alpha dog names on those sets with Shaq, Kenny Smith, Barkley. And I think Clark Kellogg and Jay Wright are both fantastic to even things out. Very even keel. I like listening to both of them.
Yeah, but to the coaches thing. Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Kyle Smith, I mean, I do think that this was something that we should have brought up when talking about Washington State and Oregon State earlier. But for as much as you celebrate them getting that money, they also lost, in Washington State's case, their basketball coach who did a really good job. And now he's going to Stanford, who will be in the ACC. So, for as much as like that money's great, you still didn't retain your basketball coach, and we've seen the movement now with coaches. Oregon State losing their football coach and Jonathan Smith. So that money is not a cure-all to everything. It's certainly much nicer to have than not to have, though, and it's putting them in a much better place than they were compared to where we thought they might be. But they're still at a major disadvantage right now, and I think that was evident by the fact that Kyle Smith took that job with Stanford.
Yep. And number 1, Greg Sankey's wrong.
Yep.
He's wrong. This was great. Don't mess with it. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Even though a lot of the mid-majors, not all of them, because you have San Diego State and you have Gonzaga, and I might be missing somebody else that are still a part of this, that Marquette are still a part of this. And I love the mid-majors. I love the opportunities. Maybe there's a way for them to come up with an agreement like we saw earlier where they leave them alone. Let them earn their way
Yeah.
in, but also don't act like they're some sort of rat because they're inside the house.
But you know where that idea came from, right? It came from his propaganda minister
yeah.
who was just,
Yep.
defending him 2 days before and getting dunked on, rightfully so, for being the PR minister for the SEC when you're just supposed to be an anchor for the SEC. But that just seemed to me what was floated out today, more of like, let's just float it out and see what people think. And then it started off with, like it or not, this is what's coming. It's like,
I know.
So this is what I don't know what's coming. Probably Greg Sankey getting whatever he wants to because he's the big power guy in charge and he's willing to be out front, unlike with the Big Ten, who's kind of doing all the same things. They're just being quieter and more in the shadows about it. But they're still very much, in step with what he's trying to accomplish, it appears. If the tournament expands, whatever. I'm just so proud of college football, basketball fans on not just eating what they're being served. And so that was so refreshing to see that garbage post from the SEC network the other day, and for people to go, screw you, quit being a kiss ass for Greg Sankey and quit, and quit, this and quit that, and just to see the massive amount of pushback against Greg Sankey and the tweaks and the things that are being floated. I know that's how a lot of people feel. But you don't always understand that because it gets drowned out by the fact that there's so many fans that are under this man's umbrella that it can get very noisy. And you've got people in media putting his stuff out there and presenting it a certain type of way to see just regular old college fans say, no, man, screw Greg Sankey and screw this SEC takeover and screw expanding the term. I love seeing that, and I love that it was so emphatic, and I don't know if it'll make a bit of difference in the long run, but it was just good to see.
You know what happens is that when something like that occurs and people have blowback, legitimate, raw, heartfelt emotions and blowback, what happens is a day or two later, there's a response coming from the machine about their which was
like it or not, the tournament's expanding and blah blah. It came from the same place.
Yep, and it's no different than in basically anything. Paul, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Garrett Ross, thank you for doing what you do with your Colorado Rockies hat randomly on today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
what the hell is that?
I like that Rockies hat.
It's got purple in it though, right?
Yeah, it's got the purple. I have almost every MLB team's hat. There's a few, and I just got a new Pittsburgh Pirates hat, but so I got a few.
Remember Brando showed us that We Are Family hat back in the day that was so cool. Emery Winter's here, and he's already working on 365 Sports tonight on the local CW at 10:30.
By the way, Hayden, thanks for your super chat. We certainly appreciate it.
Hayden
I answered
Maxwell?
it. Yes, I answered it in the chat. I'm going to leave it at that for this because it's pretty interesting, the question he asked and given the source he found it on. That's all I'll say.
All right, there we go. Hayden's good about throwing those up. Retired stockbroker. I know you had kind of a tough weekend. Hope everything's going okay with you. And everybody else that is a part of it every day. Please hit the like and subscribe button if you don't mind, and pass the word, share the word, spread the word. I'm David Smoak for Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. We appreciate our sponsors every single day and adding more. This is 365 Sports, and good night.